There are other options to examine the system and its problems that wouldn't cost as much or take as long. Here's City News reporter Prushka Gobolkista.
David White, the city solicitor, is advising that in addition to the cost of a judicial inquiry, the time and resources is one thing to keep in mind before making a decision. Councillors Catherine McKenney and Carol Meehan have been calling on the City of Ottawa to hold a judicial inquiry into the LRT since its derailment. However, David White says in the memo that there are other ways to investigate, which includes the Integrity Commissioners and Auditors General. He adds that once an inquiry is established, the timeline would be undetermined. The LRT has been out of service since September 19th following the LRT car derailment at Tremblay Station. Pirishko Gopal-Kista, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's shorts and t-shirt weather for us today. Sun and cloud, warm and humid. High 25 will feel closer to 30. Partly cloudy this evening, rain overnight and 14. And tomorrow, periods of light rain, 21. For today, the high 25.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 13 degrees. Ontario's long-term care minister will be in Vaughan today to make an announcement. He'll be joined by the local MPP, Stephen Lecce, the province's education minister. They are due to give remarks at 10 o'clock this morning. A new nationwide survey suggests while Canadians are largely confident in the safeguards in place for their children's school, most are still concerned about the spread of COVID-19 in those facilities and want children and staff to wear masks. The Canadian Hub for Applied and Social Research at the University of Saskatchewan conducted the phone survey. About 1,000 people contacted last month asking them about their worries in sending children to school and their thoughts on public health orders. It found people in Quebec and the Prairie provinces were less likely than other regions to support masks in classrooms. A federal court judge set to rule today on Major General Denny Fortin's request for reinstatement as the head of Canada's vaccine distribution campaign. This ruling follows last month's two-day hearing in which Fortin's legal team and the government argued over who removed him from the high-profile post in May and why.
Fortin's lawyers say Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government overstepped their bounds by making the decision for purely political reasons. They say that violated Fortin's rights to due process and the presumption of innocence and represented inappropriate political interference in the military's internal affairs. But government lawyers say the decision ultimately rested with Acting Defense Chief General Wayne Eyre, who acted correctly and was worried about the vaccine campaign and a military police investigation into Fortin's conduct. Fortin was charged in August with one count of sexual assault in relation to an alleged incident dating back to 1998. That case, which is separate from his federal court battle for reinstatement, is due back in a Quebec court on November 5th. Laurie Paris, The Canadian Press.
City News time, 9:03. The boating season on the Rideau Canal is now over. Parks Canada thanked everyone who visited the canal over the season. That began a little later than usual, about a week on May 28th. Just came to an end yesterday. Now, water levels along the canal will be brought down starting tomorrow from Long Island to Hogsback. And then on Friday, the level will drop from Hogsback through Dow's Lake. Burrett's Rapids and Long Island between Close and Merrickville will also see their water levels drop later on this month. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The weather win streak continues. Could be a record breaker. I'll take that this time of year. It's not snowing. In 1988, on this date, it snowed. Right? In Ottawa, it snowed. David wasn't thinking about tea times. He was thinking, where did I put my shovel? It's going to snow today. We had 3.6 centimeters, 1988. So this day, 25 degrees in the forecast. It's a winner. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Ours was great company, great food, spirits, sports, friends, family. Who could ask for anything more? But now it's back to work, okay? It's back to life. It's back to reality. And even though it's a short week, it's going to be a busy week. No doubt about that. We're all over it. Lots of local news. A lot of the local news will be coming from the meetings that are going to be happening with the Ottawa City Councillors this week. City Council meeting tomorrow. It's a big one. City Council is going to decide what to do with the most recent vacancy. Around the council table, Jenna Sudds was the councillor for Canada North. No more. She won the riding of Canada Carleton in the federal election for the Liberals, so she has resigned. And now council has a decision to make. Could have a by-election, even though the next citywide municipal election is only about a year from now, and a by-election might cost, whatever, $500,000. Or they could appoint someone. And locally, in that part of the city, the community associations, all of them, have been pushing for an appointment. They want the city to appoint the former city councillor, Marianne Wilkinson. And I spoke with Marianne about that. She said she's open to it. She told me she wasn't lobbying for the job, but she's open to accepting the job if they ask her. And she also said, I won't run in next year's election, that she retired for a reason. 83 years old, I believe she said she was. I have also interviewed councillors in recent weeks, and some of them have said they're in favor of an appointment, and others say they favor a by-election. So that all comes to a head tomorrow. And then, we talked about this last week, there's the consideration of a motion to have the city lobby the province and have the province phase out all natural gas-powered electricity generation stations. Okay. Sounds like someone didn't get the memo about the global energy shortage. Okay. Or read the news last week about the response from the independent electricity system operator. It responded to motions like this because 31 city councillors have put motions like this to the province. And the IESO said, we'd love to do it, but it's impossible. And if we did this, and we ran all kinds of scenarios where we think we could do this, and none of them worked out, if we did this and ended all natural gas-powered electricity generating stations, the people of Ontario would suffer through rolling blackouts, and hydro bills would increase by 60%. Other than that, wonderful idea. Rolling blackouts and an increase in your hydro bill of 60%, and the IESO said that was the best case scenario. That was the best case scenario. But nevertheless, up for discussion at the city council meeting tomorrow. You go figure it. Also another motion. This is really the juicy stuff, the meaty stuff, and it's the stuff I really want to talk about today. Calling a judicial inquiry into what I call the light rail affair in Ottawa. It's a motion from Councillor McKenney, seconded by Councillor Meehan, to have the city basically call an independent inquiry into itself. That's why I don't think it's going to get very far. But we're going to talk about it a lot today anyway. We're going to run it by some of our guests this morning, and I want to talk about it with you during the Talkback Hour. We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock, an hour of phone calls, an hour of opinions, the hottest hour of talk radio in town. Just ask around. And this is the question that I want to put to you today. Let's get everyone on the record. Okay? Let's get everyone on the record. I want your yay or your nay on this one. Would you support or oppose City Council calling a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair in Ottawa? 23 days. It's been 23 days without light rail in Ottawa. 23 days. The City of Ottawa voted for Phase 1 of light rail almost 10 years ago. Yep, let's do it. They voted for that in December of 2012. It took 7 years, 7 long years, to actually build the thing. for RTG to actually hand the city the keys to what we thought was going to be a brand new, state-of-the-art, electrified light rail system. And it's just been plagued with problems ever since. But despite all of the problems, the city really put a rush job, that's what I call it, a rush job, into approving and buying even more of this technology. Built by the same company. With Phase 2, the north-south part of Phase 2. Gave the councillors 10 days. 10 days. To approve Phase 2 of light rail, before Phase 1 was even up and running. 10 days. You can't get a patio approved in town in 10 days. We're talking $4 or $5 billion worth of transit infrastructure. How do you think something like that happens? The largest infrastructure project in the city's history, and your city councilor is given 10 days? Oh, and your city council didn't have all the information. Oh, the mayor knew what was going on. And no, the city manager knew what was. The city solicitor, head of transportation. They knew stuff that your city councilor didn't know. You know, Phase 1, the city went with this company with, come on, if anyone's paying attention, what do you even call it? Dubious ethical record? Was blacklisted by the World Bank, for crying out loud. SNC-Lavalin. Part of the consortium of LRT contractors for both the construction and the maintenance. And then SNC-Lavalin won again the north-south extension of Phase 2. And it won that business despite not meeting the required technical score of 70. It was given 2 chances to try and score 70. It failed both times. But not only was it allowed to continue on in the bidding process, it won the bidding process. Just some of the examples that, for a lot of people, haven't made a lot of sense from the very earliest days. And I don't think there's a lot of trust that the people currently in command of the situation have a command of the situation. Because look at the situation. For 23 days, the out of order sign has been flashing on your light rail train. I don't know. Maybe it's time to farm out an investigation to an independent set of eyes, a judge, and lots of lawyers, calling lots and lots of witnesses, spending lots and lots of money, taking lots and lots of time, quite likely years. Years. Given the complexity of the file, years to figure out what, if anything, went wrong. Maybe it's nothing more than inexperience. Right? We've never done anything like this before. These are all just, what? Rookie mistakes. Just growing pains, some have suggested. All of this grief, just growing pains. Maybe it's incompetence or negligence. Or maybe, you know what, it's something else altogether, and that something else is corruption. There, I said it. The reality is the mayor is opposed to a judicial inquiry. He has it in writing from the city solicitor. It would be a waste of time and money. The mayor is not going to go down to defeat on this motion. I guarantee you that right now. But I would like, nevertheless, to have the debate here today in the open, on the show, on the merits of such an investigation, a judicial inquiry, independent, sworn testimony. hands-on Bibles, the whole 9 yards. Or in LRT's case, 12 kilometers. Maybe the whole thing would be a waste of money. In Mississauga, they had a judicial inquiry. They spent $14 million to find out what happened to $4 million. That went to the son of Hazel McLoughlin in a land deal. Was a waste of time and money. In other inquiries of this sort, they have found lots of bad stuff. Corruption, cronyism, nepotism, favoritism, and just generally staff and politicians treating municipalities like their own personal piggy bank. They have found that. Because they went looking. But I would like to know what you think. A lot of questionable decisions up for discussion at City Hall. Taywin development. That'll be all wrapped up in the discussion on Thursday about the city's new official plan. Strange one from the start. The public broadcaster, some excellent reporting on that one, going through land records. And it turns out the Algonquins of Ontario, this group called the AOO, doesn't own most of that land. It owns some of the land, but the Taggart family owns most of it. Big land deal approved by the city in the name of reconciliation. But other Algonquin communities say this group, the AOO, not a legitimate Algonquin entity, not made up of quote-unquote real Algonquins. And it's people like Claudette Commanda and Chief White Duck from Kitigan-Zibi making those allegations, not me. And what is the city doing here anyway? 50,000 people are going to live out there years and years and years from now? There are no city services there. None. No sewer lines, no water lines, no gas lines, no hydro poles, no transit, no schools, no parks, no nothing. It's in the middle of nowhere, 20 kilometers to the nearest somewhere. Every day you have councillors screaming bloody heck about sprawl. We need to end sprawl. But then your city council goes ahead and approves this. What, in the name of fighting sprawl? That's Thursday, though. It's Tuesday. I hope you're over your turkey-induced tryptophan haze. Because it's time for the Rob Snow Show on City News.
When you've lost your breasts, you've sort of lost part of yourself. And then all at once you're losing your hair. You don't know who you are anymore. You want to feel like yourself again. So I think that the store, a mastectomy store, is essential because you've lost your identity. And then all at once you're looking for a wig, you need a headscarf, you need a camisole. There's nowhere to go, there's no one to talk to. This should be essential because there are more and more women that are getting breast cancer. I think it's 1 in 6. They're becoming younger. I have a client that's 18 years old. And where do they go? They need a place like this that the women that work there understand. They know what you're going through. It's changed quite a bit. Our hours are different. We're now open from 10 to 5. We're not as busy as we were. A lot of women are afraid to go out. They're afraid that maybe there are more people in the store. So that's why I try and let them know you are alone. There's absolutely nobody in the store except you and I. If there is a woman that she's very afraid, I will lock the door to make sure nobody else comes in. I'll put a sign back in 10-15 minutes just to give her that reassurance. Before we would have 4, 5, 6 people in the store. We didn't have to turn anybody away. Now we do. Some clients do leave and they're upset because they're in the store. They said, you know, we drove 20 minutes and now we're not allowed in the store. And I try to make them understand that there's somebody in here that's going through chemo or radiation. So that's sort of changed a lot, that we're not able to have more people in the store.
If we're talking about products, there's the bras that are adapted for mastectomy. the bathing suits that are adapted to mastectomy. We have special camisoles as well, and post-surgery bras. And then we have, for women going through chemo, the wigs that we have a big selection in the store as well. We have scarves. Some women don't feel comfortable wearing a wig. They prefer to wear a scarf or a hat, so we have a huge selection of that as well. We offer compression garments as well. When you're going through a mastectomy, you might have lymphedema in your arms after a couple of years, and you have flare-ups. So we have the sleeves, the hand as well that can be covered. We show each other's our scar. We talk about the treatments, how we felt, and I guess that's what they're looking for here. That's what makes us special. We have an added value in this store. Besides everything that's in the store, that's a product that can handle any problem that a client might have. Me and Linda, we've been through. We know how it feels in our bodies.
The opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, some of our usual Monday guests have been delayed by a day because of the Thanksgiving long weekend. And Barry McLoughlin is back. He's senior partner at TransformLeaders.ca. And thank you for being flexible and coming on the program on a Tuesday morning. I hope your Thanksgiving went well, Barry.
It went great. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I've never talked
great.
to you on a Tuesday, so this is a first.
we're breaking new ground. We're breaking new ground. So I can understand how much frustration and, gosh, even anger there must be with retailers and some in the service sector, restaurants and whatnot, because of the news that broke. The NHL season's about to get underway, and we have the Ford government making this decision. Okay, Toronto, Ottawa, other venue, you could be sold out. No capacity limitations, and if you have a restaurant, you're still stuck at, I think it's 50%. You're still stuck at 50%. Very frustrating and kind of silly, Barry. What do you think?
Well, it appears to be quite the contradiction, I must say. Apparently the official reason is, the greatest number of these cases coming forward are from restaurants and from gyms, although I've not really seen any numbers to back that up. But, it is a puzzle. I think in Ottawa, it's wishful thinking to get full capacity anyway, I think, from right now. But, gradually that will build. It is strange. I guess my one point I will make, though, and I've said it from the beginning, is that, if you do follow the rules, if you are vaccinated, you got to check the double vaccine. If you are wearing a mask when you're moving around, those are 2 out of the 3. The social distancing is the problem with it. Yeah. But in dining rooms, at restaurants, as long as you're seated, somebody can be within a couple of meters of you. So I suppose there are ways to stretch this, but I do think it kind of does raise more questions than answers.
Well, I think it even feeds into a bigger narrative. It's already attack ad season. I noticed that they're not calling them attack ads anymore. They're calling them contrast ads, Barry.
Yeah,
contrast ads.
Yeah.
And the New Democrats started running a contrast ad against Doug Ford, and it feeds into this narrative, this whole decision about, the NHL game can be sold out by my restaurants at 50%. That Ford's not in it for the little guy. Let's listen to the ad here. We have the ad. Play the ad. Okay.
This guy says he's for the little guy. But what happened to that? Every chance he gets, Ford fails your family. When workers need paid sick days, Doug denies them. When local businesses need help, Ford sides with the big box stores instead. And with a crisis in seniors' care, Ford protects owners' profits instead of protecting the people who live there. For the little guy? Please. Doug Ford, here for his buddies, not for you. A message from Ontario's NDP.
For the little guy? Please. Ooh. Ooh.
Oh yeah, we're in the season now. Andrew Horwath, we haven't heard much of for the past several years. So I think at least this is, it's interesting that they aren't using the time to promote her, who she is, what she stands for, how she would do something different. It's all attacking Doug Ford, which is kind of interesting. But I do think people still want to know who the alternative to being premier is. Stephen DeLuca, we haven't heard much from either. I think they're just going to ignore him for as long as they can. But it's an interesting strategy. I guess they feel you got a counterpunch because the Ford election machine is underway with their attack ads on Horvath.
Yes,
so
it is.
it's counterpunching.
Yeah. Okay. Let's switch to the big local story here is light rail, right? 23 days it's been down. Who knows when it's going to be back up and running again, light rail in Ottawa. So there's a motion before the City Council. It's for tomorrow's City Council meeting. Call a judicial inquiry. What do you think about that way forward? Barry McLoughlin.
I think it's a ludicrous way forward. First of all,
Okay.
judicial reviews are very difficult to come by.
Yeah.
The courts just don't automatically grant it. What is the real legal issue here? If it's contract law, we have an auditor, the city auditor, who reviews contracts against expenditures, against decisions. Is a perfect role for an auditor of the city. It won't cost $10 million plus, and it won't take 2 to 3 years to address. That's kicking the ball down the road when some of these councillors won't be around, possibly another mayor, who knows, we don't know. But it just sounds to me, and by the way, when a judicial review is underway, I can't speak to you, it's under judicial review. I mean, it's not going to get any further clarity on the whole thing over the next several years. I think it's a ludicrously ridiculous approach.
Okay, all right then. Okay, Barry's on the record. He's a nay. Okay. I'll be interested to see what happens this week, particularly in the province of Quebec, which is taking a real hard line with its healthcare workers on vaccine mandates. There's a report today, 4,000 nurses, just nurses, remain unvaccinated, a grand total of 15,000 healthcare workers overall, half of them patient-facing healthcare workers. The Legault government says, look, come Thursday, if you're not fully vaccinated, you'll be suspended without pay. You have until Thursday. What do you think is going to happen? Big game of chicken here. What do you think?
Yeah, it is crunch time. I mean, inevitably this is going to happen. You try to encourage, entice, promote. You go so far, and then there's, a certain percentage of people that will only do it when they're ultimately forced. I think we've talked about this before. The laggards, I think they're known in marketing terms. They're laggards. They have to be forced. Now, it's quite the blunt instrument to say, by this day, unless you've got both, you're out. I think you could probably stagger it. You got to get step 1 and then step 2, and then you're out. But nevertheless, I think this was going to happen, and it's going to happen obviously in Ontario as well, inevitably. And, it's going to be very difficult because a number of them still won't get vaccinated, still won't cooperate, and they want to be, face saving with patients. I think it's the one place where we want, I think the public will be behind this. People want absolute sense of security when they go into a hospital.
Right.
It shouldn't be the most vulnerable place for you to go when you're at your most vulnerable yourself.
It is kind of a Ronald Reagan air traffic controller kind of moment, isn't it, Barry?
And what was his famous line? Something like, go ahead, make my day. I mean, really, it is a brinksmanship. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Okay. Barry McLoughlin, always great. We'll talk next week on Monday. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Barry McLoughlin, Senior Partner, TransformLeaders.ca. From there to the professor, Ian Lee from Carleton, after the news on City News.
in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 15. And here's what's making news right now. Ottawa City Council will deal with a couple of major issues during its meeting tomorrow. Should a judicial inquiry be called into the LRT? And what to do with the empty council seat in Canada. Jenna Sudds resigned that seat, is now an MP. Choices are either hold a by-election with about a year to the next election or appoint someone temporarily to fill the seat until next October. Federal Court Justice Anne-Marie MacDonald will hand down a ruling today on Major General Danny Fortin's request to be reinstated as a head of the vaccine distribution program. Fortin's legal team alleges the federal government secretly decided to turf him for political reasons. Government lawyers argued that the judge should throw out Fortin's lawsuit because the matter should have been dealt with by the military, not in the courts. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the pandemic has forced more than 100 million people around the world into poverty. He says more than 4 billion people have little or no social support, no health care, no income protection when they urgently need it. Guterres is calling on vaccine inequality. He says that's a moral outrage that's condemning the world to millions more deaths. City News Time 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
He is the poor professor from the glebe. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
It's great to hear from you. Now, I get the feeling that you may want to talk about the energy crisis, and I'm up for that. The energy crunch. I'm just looking, by the way, at global oil prices right now.
Yeah.
The West Texas benchmark, above $80, okay, U.S., $80.60. The Brent benchmark, which is North Sea oil and is even more of a benchmark than West Texas oil, is $83. And 61 cents U.S. a barrel. But even the Canadian price is getting up there now, which is a benchmark called Western Canadian Select.
Yeah.
And that is, as of this morning, $67 a barrel. $67 a barrel. But you see that the spread, in other words, the Canadian oil is cheaper by $13 a barrel. And a lot of that has to do with pipeline capacity. But nevertheless, gas prices, $1.42.9 around the corner here from the radio station. Coal futures in China were at an all-time high this morning. I heard on the radio coming in, inflation. Lots of people, even the Bank of Canada governor admitted in recent days that inflation may stick around a little longer than even he first thought. So you must be getting asked this, what's behind the energy crisis right now? Energy prices.
Progressives are going to hate me for saying this, and
I already hate you.
Well, no, they're going to, because I'm going to put the finger on the environmental movement activists and the demand for decarbonization. Now, before anyone says I'm trying to deny that we should decarbonize, I'm not. But as this brilliant article published last week in Foreign Policy magazine in Washington, D.C., it's a very prestigious magazine there. Henry Kissinger used to publish in it years and years ago. And they're arguing, and he puts forward this long, he's an environmentalist, by the way, Ted Norhaus, a well-known American environmentalist. The article is called, "In the Global Energy Crisis, the Anti-Nuclear Chickens Are Coming Home to Roost." He strongly supports, as I do, the development of alternative energy. But he argues, and he puts forward very hard data, empirical arguments. I'll summarize it quickly without going in the weeds. Because we all know the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine, you have to have a parallel system to back it up. And it's either it's going to be fossil fuel based, called natural gas, oil, or coal, or it's going to be nuclear. And what happened in Europe was they said, they want neither. They're saying, no, we don't want nuclear. They closed all the nuclear power plants in Germany. Nuclear is very bad. I know France hasn't, but there's essentially no new nuclear reactors being built. And of course, they're trying to close down fossil fuels. And this article that I'm referring to from Foreign Policy magazine argues it's not just that we haven't spent enough to build enough windmills and solar. He argues it's a structural problem that when it becomes more and more variable, the more and more you create of solar and wind. And he argues it's not a lack of scale that we just haven't built enough. He argues that you end up, it creates tremendous variability in the and he said if you look at the countries, the states, and Germany and UK and California, he said are the three case examples where they built more alternative energy, solar and wind, than anyone else, and they've got the highest electricity prices because it is so variable. And he argues, and by the way, for those who are really in the weeds, it's called value deflation. Just go and Google it, and you'll find out value deflation is the economics of wind and solar. When it scales up to around 20% of the total supply, it creates enormous problems in the grid. Okay, I won't go any more in the weeds there. So his point is, because so many environmentalists are anti-nuclear, including here in Canada, then this has created the problem. And so the chickens truly are coming home to roost. I would even make it more broad. If we want to decarbonize, we've got to go nuclear. And someone called Seamus O'Regan, oh my goodness, a Liberal cabinet minister in the Trudeau Liberal government, said this last December. He said,
Natural Resources Minister.
Natural Resources Minister said, there is no model at all where we can get to net zero carbon 2050 without nuclear. And that's what he's saying. And others are saying this too. And so this has been caused, to answer your question, this has been caused because we've been demanding that China cut back on its coal, because coal, of course, is very dirty. It's the filthiest of the dirty. Europe has been cutting back on fossil fuels left, right, and center. And so they created this storm where they woke up, the policymakers woke up and said, oh my God, winter is coming, and we don't have enough energy. And people are going to go just absolutely crazy if they can't heat their homes in the winter.
Right.
And then they panicked. And that's driving up everything. And you can say, well, what's that going to do with oil? Well, they're substitutes. Oil is a substitute, not perfect. But you can use oil in some electricity plants to create electricity. You can burn natural gas. You can burn coal. So although they're not perfect substitutes, to use the language of economics, they're good substitutes. And so because there's this desperate shortage of coal, partly because China cut off Australia, because Australia criticized China over the COVID crisis, they cut them off, so there's shortages of coal. There's shortages of natural gas because there's shortages of coal, because the Chinese are trying to buy up every additional molecule of liquefied natural gas. So people are then desperately going and buying up oil because they want to use it as a substitute to burn to generate electricity in both Europe and China. So it's not that we did anything wrong yet in Canada. I think it's more talk than it has been. You know, we haven't actually closed down major natural gas capacity, but we're on the collateral damage of the monumental mess in both Europe and China. And it's going to get worse until our policymakers have the courage and the integrity and the backbone to stare down the environmentalists who are trying to stop nuclear as an alternative source of reliable, clean energy.
Okay, that's very interesting. I do wonder with this recent spike, I mean, certainly it has, these energy prices have been on a run. Okay, they've multi-year highs here, multi-year highs.
Yeah.
I do wonder if it's lumber all over again.
It's worse because...
It's worse, because lumber did a round trip. It's spiked right up and then it came right back down again.
Well, I'm not saying it won't come back down.
Right.
I'm not not saying that. I meant it's worse in the sense of the political. I didn't make myself clear. It's worse, much worse in the sense of the political ramifications. Lumber goes up. You say, okay, you say to your husband or your wife or your friend, I'm not going to do the basement this year. I was going to finish the basement. Well, I'll postpone it to next year if the lumber prices come down.
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
You postpone your rental. Okay, not everything can be postponed.
I did that actually.
It's very discretionary. Okay.
Yeah.
It is not discretionary to heat your house in January at -25.
No.
Will environmental progressives out there listen and absorb that information? You can't go to any Canadian or American or Chinese person or European and say, look, it's just too damn bad. There's not enough energy, and so you're just going to freeze in the dark in the winter. Suck it up, baby. You can't say that. You'll have people rioting in the streets.
Yes.
It's like food, it's existential.
Well, yeah, MI6 has this phrase. I just came across this weekend. Maybe you've heard of it. 4 meals from anarchy. Have you ever heard of that term? 4 meals?
Yeah. I understand the logic.
That basically a cohesive society is a functioning society is only 4 meals from anarchy. Like by the time people run out of their by the time their 4th meal is gone, then society's in a whole heap of trouble, and there's looting and
desperate things. I'm not advocating violence. In case anybody wants to send me a crazy email, I'm not. I'm just saying that when you start, look at Marie Antoinette. She was told that the peasants of Paris didn't have enough to eat. They were starving. So she said, well, let them eat cake. So what did they do? They executed her. They had a revolution. The French Revolution was a food revolution. It wasn't about, I want to vote for the king.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a food revolution. It was a shortage of ability to eat food. When you have that kind of a situation, people get really, really frightened and really, really desperate. And so I'm just saying to these environmentalists, look, you've got to face the music and say, look, we've got to develop nuclear, these modular nuclear, whatever, I don't care. And we've got to develop that if you're not willing to accept natural gas as the backup system for wind and solar. And they aren't there yet. I still get emails from people, environmentalists saying, no way will we allow nuclear to be continue to be developed in this country. Well, it's either nuclear as your backup system or it's natural gas.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. I don't know why I said MI6. MI5, of course. MI5. Yeah. Slip of the tongue on a Tuesday after a long weekend. Okay. I'm going to ask this of a lot of people today. We just asked Barry McLoughlin from TransformLeaders.ca. He thinks it's ridiculous. So I'd like to know what you think. Should there be a judicial inquiry into the LRT affair in Ottawa? What do I put you down as there?
No, I don't.
You
Not
don't?
because I'm against the investigation. I am too, by the way. Judicial inquiries are too long and too cumbersome. I think you can. Harper was big on appointing these. They were called blue ribbon panels of distinguished people who are no longer in politics. Sometimes retired CEOs, sometimes retired cabinet ministers, sometimes retired judges. And very distinguished, though. Their reputations were without challenge. And you say, okay, I want to report back in 6 months. And judicial inquiry will take 3, 4, 5 years, and we don't have that kind of time. So I think that they should go to a blue ribbon panel, maybe some retired judges, maybe retired CEOs, somebody from the transportation sector no longer in it, no conflict of interest, and maybe an opposition retired or former retired.
Maybe a former Auditor General or something.
Auditor General, the former Liberal cabinet minister retired, someone whose integrity is impeachable, who's not going to play politics and play games and write a speak truth to power report and then say we need this report by whatever, 6 months, 9 months, whatever we think is a reasonable time. A judicial inquiry will take far, far, far too long.
And cost too much money.
And cost a huge amount of money because it takes so long, so it's extended, so you're paying for all those salaries of and the lawyers and so forth. But more importantly, I think that those blue ribbon panels will have more credibility because you appoint some. I'm thinking of there's former Liberal cabinet ministers, Greg Sabora, the former finance minister, someone like that, or
There's
Dwight,
Sheila Fraser or somebody like that, right?
Yeah, and or Dwight Duncan.
Yeah.
And someone like that, and who has credibility. and someone from the transportation sector, maybe a European, I don't know, maybe an American, maybe, but the point is somebody who's got credibility, maybe a former transport minister who knows the files generically, and knows how to.
Yeah, but there's also this idea. Take the Charbonneau Commission, for example, in Quebec, or you take Gomery. You go looking for malfeasance, and guess what? Sometimes you find malfeasance, Professor.
I'm not a fan, as you know, of Mayor Watson or the council, but I don't believe they're going to end up finding this. I don't think that there's corruption.
Right. Well, why do you think this thing hasn't been working for 23 days? And why have there been all of these? It's been 2 years. It's just a laundry list of screw-ups and mess-ups and foul-ups.
I'll speculate, and I want to acknowledge I'm speculating on something I don't know about, full disclosure, but I have looked at this generically. Yeah. Big capital projects. The World Bank has studied this. I've actually read a report by the World Bank on big honking infrastructure projects. They invariably go over budget and take much longer to develop than they were supposed to according to the plan, and they invariably have all kinds of problems, and invariably, because they're very big and they involve the public, the politicians put their hands in and start planning. I don't mean money-wise. I don't mean they're taking kickbacks. They start demanding changes and overruling engineers, the technical people. And so there's too many cooks in the kitchen cooking the meal. And I suspect we'll find that there was all kinds of political interference, moving around the stations and so forth. And I think we'll find that. And also we're dealing with very complex technology I want to remind everybody, we're the second coldest country in the world after Russia.
I know.
All those
they have light rail they have light rail systems in Calgary. They have light rail systems in Edmonton.
But there may be
they get winter there.
They may be using older technology.
Well, maybe we should have bought off the shelf instead of being the guinea pig for these new trains.
That's why you want a blue ribbon panel to determine if we try to go too cutting edge. But I think a blue ribbon panel can come back very quickly and get to the bottom of it.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the need for a parking garage at the new Civic campus. If that ever sees the light of day for the Ottawa Hospital. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's such a beautiful field because it's all natural. I'm able to talk to a lot of people who are going through different journeys of health where they really don't know where to start, where to begin. And I'm happy and grateful to have all this knowledge where I can actually help them and guide them. So, of course, medications have a great place in our system, but even so do natural therapies, which have been around for centuries and centuries. Like, old time, ancient times, everything, herbs grew, everything was done with nature, all healing was done with nature. So I'm totally in love with all the elements with nature. In our beautiful village of Manotick, the Manotick Natural Market, you can find tremendous different things. So we have herbs, we have vitamins, we have natural body care, we do infrared sauna therapy, nutrition counseling, acupuncture, Bowen therapy, energy healing. So we're like a wellness hub along with being a full health food store. We are 1 year into pandemic since it started last year in March. It was a shock. Usually I see things coming, and I definitely did not see that coming. Golden Root is a product that I created 4 years ago, actually for my kids, just for immune system, overall health. And it just took off with certain friends of mine who had cancer or some severe issues, and they started finding that it was really helping them from different tests they had done with their doctor. And I knew I had something really special. So then I went through the proper procedure of being able to sell it. So it's actually, I'm not allowed to make it anymore in my house 4 years ago. And it is made in a Health Canada approved lab, and then it comes to me. And what Golden Root is a formulation of turmeric, ginger, lavender, oregano, and black pepper, all food grade, which is the most bioavailable turmeric in the market right now for pain, inflammation, digestion, immune system, concussion, liver health, and brain health. So, and it tastes like salad dressing. We do a lot of in-house, so we make our in-house concoctions of teas. You can come here, tell us what your health issues are, and we can blend it right there. And there's some that are already prepared beforehand for sleeping, for anxiety, for different things. And in that bar, we basically make cold brew teas and cold brew nitrogen coffee. And again, it's all local. Everything we do is local, and as many herbs we can find locally as well. If a client can't come out, we'll go out our way to deliver it. And you're getting that personal touch when you come in. If you have an issue, we will listen and help you. We're very, very active in the community, so we would like the same thing back for the community to come to.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. When I saw this letter that was published, column op-ed published in the Ottawa Citizen last week, I wasn't so much struck by the content, a very compelling argument, an argument that I've made actually several times on the radio about the need for considerable parking at any campus of the Ottawa Hospital, and in particular the new civic site, if it ever comes to pass. But it wasn't so much the argument, but who was making the argument, because the letter is signed by, I mean, my goodness, Professor, it's every chief of staff of every hospital of note in the entire region, not just in Ottawa, but in all of Eastern Ontario. Striking, really.
Can I even reemphasize that more?
Yeah.
They're real doctors.
Yes.
They're real administrators of healthcare, and in hospitals you deal with sick and ill people. Who are opposed to them? Privileged progressives in the urban core who absolutely are not scientists. They're not doctors. They are absolutely not competent to discuss public health care. They're not in the business delivering it day by day. And what they're doing is because there are some people, and I live in the Glebe, remember that. Okay? I've lived in the Glebe for 34 years. I know the mentality. I don't hang around with conservatives because there's no conservatives in the university or in the Glebe.
They have tried to evict him and revoke his citizenship of the Glebe, but he just keeps hanging on.
My point is I understand deeply the progressive mentality, okay? And there's quite a few of them that are very, very anti-oil, of course,
yes,
but anti-car.
Yes.
And they've wrapped themselves in the cloak. First off, I want to point out the deception of the critics to the garage, the opposition to the garage, before we get to a larger issue. They have wrapped themselves in the environmental cloak yet again. We're doing this to save the planet and all those cars. This is a load of garbage. Does anybody believe that the people coming in from Pembroke or Renfrew or Arnprior are going to walk or bicycle to get here?
No.
They're still going to drive their car. My point is, what these people are saying, the opposition is saying, okay, we get, they're not saying this out loud, but they're saying, yeah, you bring your car. We just don't want you parking it near our house. Park it if it's 20 blocks away, well, so what? Like Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake. We're going to say the new Marie Antoinettes are saying, you can walk. Maybe you had a heart attack. Maybe you're very sick. Too bad. We don't care. We just don't care about the million people coming to the Civic every year for treatment. And you don't go to a hospital for a picnic. You don't go there.
You're spoiling my view of Dow's Lake, though. You're spoiling my view of Dow's Lake.
And I want to make a larger point here, okay? There is, and I'm channeling my inner David Brooks, the very liberal columnist for the very liberal New York Times, okay? But there's a pattern in the data that these progressives wrap themselves in the flag, and I say the flag, that's slang English, meaning they wrap themselves in a holier-than-thou cause, the environment. But when you dig down, you find out, no, it's about self-interest. This opposition is because some people don't want to.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Rob, it's the same argument.
Self-interest. What's the self-interest?
In the urban core, tried to stop the expansion of the city and thereby turn us in the urban core from millionaires into multimillionaires. It's the same logic as the people, the progressives on Powell, misappropriating a public street and saying, you, the rest of the people of Ottawa, can't drive on our street, but you must continue to pay for our garbage collection and our snow removal. In other words, the pattern in the data is self-interest disguised as environmental greater good. And this argument against a parking garage has nothing to do with the environment. People will continue to drive their cars, whether they're coming in from Kanata or Barhaven or Stittsville or Richmond or Orleans or Ottawa South. And everyone knows that. They understand that. They just don't want a parking garage in their backyard. Okay, but they're deceitfully and dishonestly dressing it up in the guise of environmental justification. And it's phooey, and it's bogus, and it's deceitful.
Yeah, hospital parking is a big issue. You know, it's a big issue because, first of all, it's a major source of revenue for the hospital.
It is.
Right? Hospital parking. Mm-hmm. But also the cost, because if somebody's in the hospital, friends and family are paying, you know, a lot of money if a family member has to be with a loved one and has to be at the hospial every day. Rob, my gosh, the bills can add up, right? And you see it when you drive by Smythe Road, where the General and the CHEO and the big health complexes are the people who will not pay to park, and they park instead on Linda Lane and become targets for the Ottawa bylaw by parking up and down Linda Lane. It's the number one complaint that they get at the hospital. People will skip out on medical appointments because they're afraid of the parking bill.
Yeah, exactly. I have been going for years because the rheumatology clinic, the arthritis clinic, is in one of the. First it was in the Civic, then they moved it to 30 years ago, and then they moved it to the General, and then to the Riverside. I have paid over those years thousands of dollars without exaggeration. I mean, I get a parking bill $15-20 every time.
Right.
You know, and then you go for blood tests because I go to the hospital for the blood test. Of course, I'm crazy, but I do. There's another $15 every time. You know, and I pay a lot of money, and I understand why they do it. Universities do the same thing, by the way, across Canada. It's called ancillary revenues on the income statement, and they're an important part of revenue because we're constrained. I get it, and but the larger point, Rob, is this. I have to use strong words. This fraudulent claim that we can function in Canada without cars, that we're going to go to a hospital without a car. We're going to somehow, walk or bike or take an electric scooter in January at minus 25.
Well, maybe from Preston Street, maybe from Preston Street, but not from Deep River. You're not.
Or how about just the West End? This is the point, and it drives me nuts when I hear councillors talking. Well, they can do it in Amsterdam, Rob. And this is for all the people on council. I've been to Europe over 100 times, and I've been there in the winter. And yes, I've been to Amsterdam and London, okay? For anyone to compare Ottawa or Calgary or any of the colder parts of Canada, which is everywhere except Vancouver, to Europe is just deceitful and dishonest. Europe is much, much milder. It's much warmer. It doesn't go to minus 25 or minus 40. And they have densities of 500 million people in a small area and the densities are 250 to 500 people per square kilometer. Canada's four, lowest in the world. And we're the second coldest in the world after Russia. So, yes, we use cars. We use a lot of them because it's a much more hostile climate than Europe. And our counselors and those advocates refuse to acknowledge that.
All right, that does it for this week in our conversation. We'll speak again next week. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, bye-bye. Always interesting. Ian Lee, Professor of Management at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Coming up next, it's the Talkback Hour. More on the decision before City Council tomorrow calling a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair. At 750-1310, this is City News.
1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Those who feel the city should take immediate steps with LRT and call for a judicial inquiry will demonstrate at City Hall this afternoon. Groups like Horizon Ottawa and Free Transit Ottawa gathering along with concerned citizens at 5:30 this afternoon at City Hall. They'll be calling for a public inquiry into the LRT performance to date, as well as calling for the cancellation of what they term the disastrous P3 maintenance contract for that system. A couple of councillors will introduce motions on both of these issues at the regular council meeting tomorrow. Another councillor, Sean Menard, is scheduled to speak at this afternoon rally today. City News Time 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's shorts and T-shirt weather for us today. Sun and cloud, warm and humid. High 25 will feel closer to 30. Partly cloudy this evening, rain overnight and 14. And tomorrow, periods of light rain, 21. For today, the high, 25.
And right now, 13 degrees in Ottawa. It's 15 in Smiths Falls. We're expecting an announcement in just moments from now from the province's long-term care minister. Rod Phillips will be in Vaughan today, along with the local MPP for that riding, Stephen Lecce, who is the education minister. They are due to give remarks this hour. Moderna has no plans to share the formula for its COVID-19 vaccine, despite requests from the World Health Organization.
The company's chairman tells the Associated Press the company won't enforce patent infringement on anyone else making a coronavirus vaccine during the pandemic. But the drug maker won't go as far as sharing its messenger RNA technology after executives concluded the best way to increase global supply is by scaling up the company's own production. I'm Catherine Jeté.
City News Time 10:03. The UN Secretary General says this COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically affected the world's poor.
On the global scale, the numbers affected are staggering. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
The pandemic has forced more than 100 million people into poverty. More than 4 billion people have little or no social support, no health care, no income protection when they so urgently need it.
Vaccine inequality, he adds, is a moral outrage that's condemning the world to millions more deaths and prolonging an economic slowdown that could cost trillions of dollars, hitting the poorest countries hardest of all. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
City News Time 10:04. While the weather is not fall-like, a couple of indications this warm weather is not lasting. The boating season on the Rideau Canal is now over. That ended yesterday. Water levels along the canal will be brought down starting tomorrow. The first to be reduced, the stretch from Long Island to Hogsback. Then on Friday, the level will drop from Hogsback through Dow's Lake. Also, the NCC has thanked all those who either sponsored or took advantage of bike days this year. The weekend closure of NCC-controlled roads for cycling and walking finished this past weekend. The NCC thanks its sponsors for what they term a great season. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
One big question for the hour. We'll see how the hour goes. Should the city council call a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair? Yes or no? Why or why not? Okay, it's very simple. Should the city council call a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair? A judge appointed, lawyers hired, witnesses sworn in, okay, testifying under oath about what happened, who knew what, when did they know it, why did they do it, how come it's so bad? Should there be a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Day 23. Day 23, more than 3 weeks, and it's remarkable that residents have no idea when a $2 billion light rail system will ever return to duty or why it's out of duty this time around. What caused this latest derailment? And just think about that, this latest derailment. the latest derailment. So coming for a vote tomorrow at the city council meeting is a motion that calls upon the city council to call a judicial inquiry. This is Catherine McKenney's motion. I don't think it's going anywhere. That's not the point. I'm sure the mayor has managed to marshal his allies around the table, and it will never get off the ground. It's not going to have the votes. And really, when you think about it, what would council be doing if it called an inquiry? It would basically be calling an investigation into itself, right? Do I want to investigate myself and all the bad decisions I made? No, I think I'll take a pass on that one. So, come on. Is it going to happen? No, it's probably not going to happen. My question is not that. Should it happen? City solicitor says no. Solicitor sent a memo out arguing that a judicial inquiry into the whole light rail decision-making process would take too much time, cost too much money. Now, we've had two guests on the program this morning. They agree with the city solicitor. Barry McLoughlin, Professor Lee, two people I admire greatly. They wasted time, wasted money. The city solicitor in the memo cites a number of examples to bolster this claim, pointing to the years that it took and the money that was spent on judicial inquiries into scandals in other cities. City of Waterloo inquiry, $3.8 million, took a year and a half. City of Toronto inquiry, $19 million, took 3 years. $19 million took 3 years. Mississauga inquiry, $7.5 million, year and a half. Collingwood inquiry, $8.2 million, 2.5 years. City of Hamilton inquiry, $6.6 million and counting because it's not done yet. It's still going on. All according to this briefing note from the solicitor. A person who just so happens to be a senior city manager and backs up the mayor's position really quite nicely. My question for you is it worth spending that kind of time, that kind of money on an inquiry given the size and scope of the light rail project and its less than envious track record of performance so far? Phase 1, more than $2 billion, right? Phase 2, more than $4 billion. Phase 3, who knows? $4 billion, maybe $5 billion. And from start to finish, remember, we're almost in the 10th year of this already. Give it another 5 years, 15 years from start to finish. 15 years from start to finish. So would it be worth spending, I don't know, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million? Taking a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years to find out what happened, where things went. Gosh, I hate to use this cliche, but let's use it. Off the rails, okay? I leave it up to you. I wonder what they would find. I wonder what they would find. Let's get going here. Al in Ottawa, good morning. You're on City News. Al, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Rob.
Morning, Al. Do you think we should have a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair?
Absolutely. I think we need to get to the root cause of this debacle.
Okay.
And I think instead of going around in the weeds and asking all the questions on the technical matters, I think there's one important question that needs to be asked and needs to be answered by all the people involved.
All right. Was
federal funding for phases 1 and 2 conditional on awarding of the contracts to certain companies? And I think...
Well, I think when you're asking that question, you have a certain company in mind, right?
No,
right?
I mean, you know...
No, come on, right?
I mean, you could look at, of course, you could look at the latest Ethics Commission report, and you can, derive your own opinions from that.
Sure.
But, I mean, I guess it's almost too obvious a question to ask, but because everything is out there, but this is what we need to get to. Sometimes city officials could be put in a corner and say, look, if we're going to proceed with this project, we need funding. And the bodies that come, the government that comes to fund may have certain requirements or conditions.
Right.
But I think therein lies the problem.
Like the 9,000 jobs at SNC Lavalin are the most important jobs in the country. It'd be really nice if you hired that company, for example.
Don't get me going on that.
Right. Okay. All right, Al. Thank you. But you do support a judicial inquiry. Okay, you're the first to do that this morning. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your position and getting us going here in the Talk Back Hour. Ian, you're on City News. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah. Would you like a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair?
After what I've learned listening this morning, I'm actually going to have to change my tune. I think that inquiry would take a bit too long. However, I do feel that something needs to be done. I mean, irregardless of how, I guess we won't get into the politics of how the city likes to spend money around Ottawa, but I mean, it doesn't really matter what industry you work in, whether it's light rail, I don't know, heavy civil construction, land development. You know, for example, if a company hits a gas line once or twice, well, the gas company comes out and we repair the line and stuff to the company to talk to the guy who hit it. But all of a sudden now, if we continually have this issue with hitting a gas line, for example, well, there's a next step that has to be taken. We can't just see silly things continually repeat themselves and not eventually start to ask ourselves why.
Yeah, like what would you do with the guy who kept hitting the gas line? Sooner or later, you wouldn't let him operate the piece of equipment that hit the gas line, right? You'd get a new guy.
Amen. Now, I do have one last thing I want to leave you with, Rob. Quick and short and sweet here. I don't know if it applies to your Tim Hortons, but very, very quickly, going back to last Friday, Brockville is known for having 9 Tim Hortons on one square block. So if there's Tim Hortons info to get, you're going to get it in Brockville. And of all the people I've talked to, I experience the same thing. I usually leave Brockville around 4 a.m., 3:30, 4 in the morning.
Right.
And we went from Tim Hortons open to they were closed, they were open, they were closed. Long story short, Rob, I have talked to about a half a dozen different Tim Hortons employees. All comes down to staffing. Just can't get the people to work.
Can't get the people to work. Okay, that's very interesting. I didn't know that. Not 9 Tim Hortons on one city block. Isn't that something? Thank you, Ian. All right, that's good. That's good. Okay, if you're going to get the scoop on what's going on at Tim Hortons, Brockville's the place to be. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Tim in Ottawa, you're on City News. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rob.
Good morning. Would you like a judicial inquiry? Like an official public inquiry into the light rail affair?
This is how I'm going to answer your question.
All right, okay.
40 years ago, we cut the ribbon on the transitway system. And for 40 years, the system has ran without a hiccup, without a problem. Well, we had an accident. We did. But, I mean, from it ran admirably. It got the job done. It did. But I also remember pictures of and videos of passengers getting out and trying to push their bus up a hill because it was stuck in the snow. Buses that you can't get snow tires for. It did have problems, Tim. It had its own problems. Right? Weather-related.
Weather-related.
But here's my point. When the new system, phase 1, goes down, what do we turn to?
Buses. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, we turn to buses.
Yes, we do. And we've torn up most of the transitway. Most of the transitway doesn't even exist anymore, right? So, yeah.
If you really want to dig into this debacle, you should get Andy Hayden, if he would come in for 1 hour and explain to you what this city had and what we.
Well, I've done that interview in the past. I've been there and I've done that. I've already done that interview, so I don't really need to do it again.
It's almost criminal what they've done.
Well, if you think it's almost criminal, then should we have an inquiry?
Absolutely.
We should have an inquiry.
Absolutely.
What if it takes
whatever it takes?
2 years, 3 years, or whatever.
Let's say it takes 5.
5.
If somebody is held responsible for this, it will be worth it.
It'll be worth it. Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Okay. There you go. Okay. Lots of differing opinions on this issue this morning. I'd love to know yours. It will come up for a vote at the City Council meeting tomorrow. A judicial inquiry into the light rail affair. Are you a yay or are you a nay? 750-1310. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our pamper items. So your pamper items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
On the Rob Snow Show, the phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Are you for or against calling a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair? I mean, think about it. By the time it's all said and done, LRT construction and maintenance in Ottawa, what will that cost? 10 billion, probably more. So an inquiry, say, costs 20 million. 20 million on 10 billion, it's kind of a rounding error, right? Kind of a rounding error. On the flip side, we've heard, well, we have an Auditor General in Ottawa. We have an Integrity Commissioner. Let's have a blue ribbon panel. Perhaps they could accomplish more or less the same sort of thing, and it won't take as long, won't cost as much. I don't know. Kind of spitballing here. Kind of spitball. And it's difficult to know because we don't know what would be uncovered in the end that we don't already know. Would it just be a rehash of what's already in the public domain, or, I don't know, would we uncover some kind of juicy scandal? Jason, you're on City News. Jason, good morning.
Your thing you just brought up there about the Auditor General in Ottawa and the Integrity Commissioner.
Yes.
And to put integrity in quotation marks there.
Okay.
I think you might as well just go to the mayor and ask him, what do you want them to say before you even have it. You know, they're going to come out with whatever the mayor says. They're one of the puppets, just like council is. All but 3 of them voted in favor of all this thing. And at the very beginning, with all them citing how they didn't have a chance to review anything. And what is the city doing at the very start, entertaining a company that was already found guilty of bribing government officials to get contracts? And then it comes out that they didn't even qualify to make a bid in the first place. And when that comes out, they go ahead and give the contract to them anyway.
Yeah, that was phase 2, the phase 2 contract.
Yeah, still though.
Yes,
what are they doing?
Yes. No, I have questions about that. I still have questions about that. Yeah.
They had already pleaded guilty to bribing government officials at the time.
Yes.
And paid money. They even gave Gaddafi in Libya a yacht. It was in the paper. They were selling it. And now I read in the paper recently, I think it's 4 or 5 other times they've been found guilty, and 2 of the guys just got criminally charged recently. And the city entertains a company. Politicians are usually worried about their reputations, and they entertain a company that's already found guilty of bribing people like them, government officials, to get the contract, and nobody thinks, gee, I wonder how they got the contract they never qualified to bid for.
Right.
I remember way back they were going to have Menard and the one from television there, Caroline.
Okay. Yep.
They put forward a motion to have an investigation by the Ontario Ombudsman, and last minute, the mayor there comes in and changes the motion so that they're going to have the city release all the information by a certain date. It was only a few months off, and also put together a lessons learned panel. But what ends up happening? No information comes out. But there certainly was no investigation by the Ombudsman to let that slide. So I think the whole thing stinks from the very beginning when they had.
If it stinks, because a judicial inquiry would be independent. There'd be no.
If there's a judicial inquiry and it could be independent, and the mayor doesn't work his connections through all the federal Liberal connections that he has, and actually stink up the actual judicial inquiry as well, that'd be great. But I'm telling you, this whole thing is a mess, and they wasted the city's money, and they continue to do so with a company. Well, how should a city be allowed to entertain a company that's found guilty of bribing government officials? It doesn't make sense.
Good point, Jason. Good point. Made multiple times during the call. I appreciate. He's even I think suspicious of the independence of a judicial inquiry. But nevertheless, let's keep rolling with it on the need for a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair. Are you a yes or a no, or on that one? Brian, Ottawa. Good morning, Brian. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. I'm a first-time caller.
I appreciate that, sir. Yep.
I would just, the thing that I would do, if the mayor and Alan Hubhley and all those cronies on the Transit Commission have nothing to worry about, call a referendum instantly. Let the people of Ottawa make the decision. See, I'm tired of these.
And I'm sorry, Brian, you kind of lost me. What would the question on the referendum be?
Should we have a judicial inquiry?
Oh, we should have a referendum on whether to have the inquiry.
Yes or no.
Right.
I guarantee you it would be 99% yes.
No, okay. All right.
I think it's despicable the way these people run our city council. It's just terrible. I mean, like, if you have anything against the mayor, I tell you, all of a sudden, all this little huddle just comes in and just cuddles him up and looks after him. You know, whether it's right or wrong. And I think that, city council to me, is a real joke. We need to have, forget your political lines here, where they are. Let's just do the job and do it right. Do what you're elected to do.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian, all for, in fact, all the callers have been for a judicial inquiry. All the callers have been men this morning so far. No women have called. Serge in Nepean, a wonderful place to be in.
Yes, good morning, Rob.
Yes.
I'm totally against an inquiry.
Totally against it, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to remember, this has got to be the biggest project in modern history of Ottawa that has ever gone out. These people that the city is dealing with, this is peanuts for them. They're used to doing probably contracts 10 times this size. The contract that the city has is absolutely bulletproof because that's what these guys do. That's what they do for a living. The city doesn't do that kind of work as a living, so they're stuck with it whether they like it or not.
Okay.
Contracts are contracts. Actually, I
think we've already, one way or the other, Serge, if I could just, are you saying you think we've been out-lawyered already on this one?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
And the thing is corrupt. So what can you do? It's corrupt. These guys are professional.
Okay, but you say it's corrupt, but how would we know it's corrupt unless we go and do an investigation and uncover corruption, which is kind of the point of having a judicial inquiry. So.
For the reason you said earlier, you're investigating yourself.
Yeah.
They all know they've done wrong here. I don't know if they've done anything legally wrong, but they know they've done wrong, and no, they don't want to open that door. Absolutely not will they open that door.
Okay. All right, Serge. Thank you. Okay, so he's against having a public inquiry, even though he thinks there's probably corruption. Look, I did some quick research. Read a lot of media reports over the last few days on what these inquiries accomplished in the other municipalities that have had them in recent years, what they were about, what came of them, and I came away from that exercise thinking that, you know what, the track record of these inquiries is Well, it's kind of spotty. No doubt, some of them uncovered big scandals. But there are others that were held in other municipalities. You could argue they were pretty much a waste of time, effort, money. And I'll outline some of them after the 10:30 news. Not one of them involved a project as expensive and as complex as the light rail affair here in Ottawa. In most cases, in the other municipalities where they've had these judicial inquiries, you're talking about projects and contracts worth tens of millions of dollars. Here in Ottawa, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars with light rail here in Ottawa. But we'll talk about that after the news. We've reached halftime on the Talkback Hour, asking you about the big motion that comes before Ottawa City Council tomorrow. The vote on whether to have a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair. This is City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, October 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 16 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 18. And here's what's making news this hour. COVID case count in Ontario for the past 2 days has just been released. 458 cases yesterday, an additional 390 today. 2 deaths were reported yesterday, none today. Ottawa had 30 new cases yesterday and another 18 today. Over the past 2 days, there has been 1 new case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 28 in Eastern Ontario, and 7 more cases in Renfrew. Before the council meeting, where light rail will be brought up tomorrow, those who feel the city should call a public inquiry will demonstrate at City Hall this afternoon. Groups like Horizon Ottawa and Free Transit Ottawa gathering along with concerned citizens at 5:30 at City Hall. They will call for a public inquiry into the LRT performance to date, as well as call for the cancellation of what they say is a disastrous P3 maintenance contract over the next 30 years. Long-term care announcement we told you was coming today is a new 256-bed home in Vaughan. Minister of Long-Term Care Rod Phillips says this new home will be built on former government land that was sold with a condition some of the land be used for long-term care. It is scheduled to open this new home in 2026. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Would you be in favor or would you be opposed to calling a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair in the city of Ottawa? Comes to a vote at the City Council tomorrow at the City Council meeting. As I mentioned, I did some research. Looked up some of the history of some of the other judicial inquiries held in some other cities, especially the ones cited by the city solicitor in his memo to councillors saying judicial inquiries are a waste of time and money. The City of Toronto's inquiry is probably the juiciest one of them all. It became known as the MFP inquiry, or the Bellamy inquiry. And it was about a computer leasing scandal in the city of Toronto. Doesn't that sound juicy? Computer leasing. It was, though. They went searching for answers on how a contract to lease computer equipment went from costing the city $43 million to costing the city $84 million. And it uncovered, this is according to TVO, quote, unscrupulous staff, illicit affairs, payoffs, and just bad behavior from start to finish. End quote. Bad behavior from start to finish. But the whole thing cost $19 million. And it's not like anyone ever faced the music. No criminal charges or anything. It ended some careers. You know what? It launched others. Like the career of Rob Ford, for example. Yeah. The inquiry in Collingwood was cited by the city solicitor as a waste of time and money. I don't know, if I lived in Collingwood, I might disagree. That was called to look into the sale of 50% of the shares in the local electricity utility, the Collingwood electricity utility. They sold half of it to another company, and then they took the money that they made from that sale, and they spent it on a sports arena and an aquatic center for Collingwood. Quote from one news report about the findings of the judicial inquiry, quote, a litany of malfeasance, misdirection, greenwashing and greed, and enabling and willful ignorance and a cover-up and just general shenanigans. Litany of malfeasance and misdirection and greenwashing and greed and enabling and willful ignorance and a cover-up of general shenanigans. $7 million to do that inquiry. $7 million. But what it did in the end was it uncovered corruption. Insiders taking advantage of their position to line their own pockets. In Waterloo, they had an inquiry into a land project that was supposed to see a private company build a new city sports complex called Rim Park. City planned to spend $49 million, but it involved questionable financing practices. So instead of costing $49 million, it cost the city $220 million. Because the city ended up paying 9% interest on a loan. And according to a report last year from the Kitchener-Waterloo Record, the city is still on the hook for something like $90 million related to that project. That inquiry, $4 million, took about 9 months, found conflict of interest and deception. But apparently the new facility is widely used in the community. So there's that. In Hamilton, they had an inquiry into something called the Red Valley Parkway, which is a road, a slippery and dangerous road notorious for terrible traffic accidents. And the residents wanted to know, how the heck did this stretch of road ever get the go-ahead? Who approved this thing? So many accidents that there's an ongoing class action lawsuit that is seeking $250 million in damages for victims injured in car accidents. According to the Hamilton Spectator, this inquiry has cost $7 million already, and it's not done yet. Will probably cost $12 million by the time it's all wrapped up. Reports issued, recommendations made. And in Mississauga, $7 million on an inquiry to find out if Hazel McCallion was in a conflict of interest in a questionable land deal. $7 million. because a company that was partly owned by her son collected $4 million in the deal after it fell through with the city. They spent $7 million to investigate $4 million. And Hazel McCallion did not resign as mayor and denied that there was ever anything to it. And that's what came of that. You could say wasted time and money. But you see the time and money that's involved in it and the investigations, right? Small potatoes compared to the money that's being spent on light rail here in Ottawa. But I'm sure some people are wondering, what would we find if we started digging? Would we find conflict of interest, bad governance, lax oversight, questionable procurement, nepotism, favoritism, cronyism, corruption? Would we find corruption? Do you want the city to go looking at all? 23 days, no functioning light rail system. Christine in Osgood, you're on City News. Should we have a judicial inquiry into all of it?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay.
But I don't think they should be allowed to vote on whether or not they should have it. My example is that if you get a notice to get a tax audit on your small business, and your household gets to vote to whether or not you get the audit, it's kind of ridiculous.
Okay. All right.
Like, so you know, they want to check you out, but the people they want to check out are able to say, no, we don't want to get checked out.
Right.
Make sense?
Well, no, this is why I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It makes for an interesting discussion, but in the end, I don't think it's going to go anywhere because you're exactly right. What would they be doing? They'd be saying, yes, please investigate me.
That's right.
Yeah, I vote for that you investigate me. Yeah.
Their vote or no makes them look more guilty.
Okay. All right, Christine, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, yep. Angelo in Nepean. Good morning, Angelo.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, sir. Do you think there should be a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair?
Yes, 100%.
100%.
And I have to tip the hat to Catherine McKenney for bringing the motion.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen because of Watson and his cronies. But hire people that are going to, or get reviewers that are not involved in the city and not some of his allies. And let's see where our money, the taxpayers' money, is going. Check the bank accounts. $5 million spent in maintenance. I want to see what's going on. We're paying for it.
Yep.
And they shouldn't have the right to say, no, don't investigate me. We, the people paying for it, have the right to see what's going on.
All right, Angelo, thank you. We should have the right to see what's going on. I mean, 23 days. 23 days people have been stuck without the backbone of the entire public transit system. More than $2 billion worth of transit infrastructure that took more than 7 years to build. And look at it. And we are going to be building this kind of very type of light rail infrastructure, you mark my words, for years to come. Should we have a judicial inquiry into the light rail affair? 750-1310, lines available. Rodney, what do you think, Rodney? Hi.
I think there should be an inquiry to get to the judicial answers. And like what my question is going to be is what information on the deal was given to the city lawyers that they had to look at the deal and say, yes, we can, make this purchase. And I just wondering about a system that wasn't winter run and why there wasn't a big clause with a winter performance. If you sign the thing over in June or July, you haven't tested it during the winter. There should have been winter testing.
Right.
And I'll get back to the original 12 days of testing that never happened. I think we got
12. It was supposed to, 12 straight days or something, right? Yeah. It was supposed to, and it was kind of, okay, let's say it works for 7 days and then it breaks down. Well, then you go back to zero and you got to run it. You have to get it to the point where it can run for 12 days.
We never got
I don't think we ever did get to 12 days.
We're paying for it now.
Yeah, did we ever get to 12 days? I don't know.
I'm going to leave you go so you can talk to me.
All right, thank you. All right, Roger in Nepean. Roger, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Rob.
Hi, Roger. Should there be an inquiry?
Well, let me ask you this first.
All right. Okay.
I wasn't sure that these light rail cars were built by Bombardier, but I guess that's the case, is it?
Well, no, they were built by a French company named Alstom,
Okay.
Which did later go on to buy the train business of Bombardier.
Okay.
But we didn't go to Bombardier and give them the contract, no.
Okay, I'm going to phrase my question a little bit roundabout, but I'm going to be brief.
All right.
When you were a young fellow and bought your first car,
yes,
did your dad tell you, that nice man in Cape Breton, son, don't go buy a new model. Don't go buy the Ford such and such that's been changed from the last.
Right. Yeah. Sure, he gave me that advice. Yes, yes.
Has anybody else in North America got the same light rail cars that we have?
These were brand new, yeah.
Well, what a foolish thing to do, to buy something that's made specially for us, and we can't go to any city and say, how do you like it? How does it work?
Right.
Is it efficient?
Yes.
Yes. That's like Boeing have built a brand new airplane, but they haven't even got gas in it yet and tried it. But we're going to go out and fill it with fuel, and we're going to go for a nice long trip to Regina in it. Would anybody do that? No.
I'll pass on that. But Roger, it's such a good point you make, because we bought, I think it's 32 or 34 of them for phase one, and then before they were even being used yet, before they had carried any passengers yet, we went and bought 38 more of them for phase two.
Well, you know what fools the council members were and the mayor that voted to spend all that money on something like that was untested, unknown. How's it going to work? And never mind the fact that Ottawa has an extreme winter. It's no end of incompetence in the mayor and the city council.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you.
And it's good to
so should there be
on this station.
Well, thank you, Roger. So in the end, given all of that,
pardon me?
Should we have an inquiry then, an inquiry?
Well, I'm damned if I know. If it seems in the most of them, they cost millions, and what's resolved? Or does anybody go to jail? Or is anybody fired?
Generally speaking, nobody goes to jail. Some people resign in disgrace, but those things happen. Some people are long gone before the report's ever issued.
Well, isn't that the truth?
Yes. Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye. What some great points he made. Stittsville. Ron in Stittsville. Should there be a judicial inquiry, Ron?
Oh, I have a quick question because, forgive my ignorance, but can criminal charges come of the blue panel and
there can be,
judicial?
well, from my reading of the news reports based on these other judicial inquiries, what has happened at the municipal level is usually the OPP investigates but doesn't seem to get very far. Now, when you think about inquiries that have been held at the provincial level with for example, corruption in construction in the Charbonneau Commission in Quebec, lots of people went to jail. If you think about the Gomery inquiry, federally in the sponsorship, people went to prison, federal prison time.
Okay. I'm all for the judicial inquiry then. Okay. Absolutely. I don't care how long it takes. There's something, I'm sorry, it's just everything adding up to something not smelling right. That's just my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Good questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. I didn't mean to cut you off. But we do have to run anyway. 10:45, final quarter coming up. 3 lines available there. Judicial inquiry comes before a vote tomorrow at Ottawa City Hall. The light rail affair, what are you, yay or nay on that one? How you voting on that one? 750-1310. This is City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporated the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them because I want people to realize even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous, and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Judicial inquiry into light rail affair is the topic for the hour. To the previous caller's questions, does anyone ever go to jail as a result of an inquiry? Sometimes. If you think back to the Charbonneau Commission in Quebec, went looking for corruption in construction. What did they find? Corruption in construction, envelopes stuffed with cash. Fraud, corruption, and conspiracy. 330 people were charged. 114 of them were convicted. $500 million in misappropriated funds in Montreal alone. Uncovered bribes, kickbacks. Gilles Vaillancourt was one of the most powerful mayors in the history of Montreal. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for pocketing more than $8 million. Michael Applebaum became interim mayor. He was taking bribes as well. He served jail time. We used to run this contest at the other radio station that I worked with. Spend 2 nights in Montreal. If you make it to the third day, they make you the mayor, I used to say. There were so many politicians caught up in that. But they started peeling back the layers of the onion, and it was wild what they found. What would we find here? Maybe we don't find anything except stupidity, incompetence. I'm not alleging anything. I'm just telling you what happened in other inquiries where they went looking for answers, and sometimes the answer was people were corrupt and lining their own pockets. I mean, Gomery was the mother of them all, right? The Gomery Commission into the sponsorship scandal that sent the federal Liberals to the political wilderness for years. That all started because of a report from the Auditor General, Sheila Fraser, at the time. She looked into the sponsorship of all kinds of events, sporting events and cultural events, where they would have the Canadian flag. The Montreal Grand Prix would have the Canadian flag. The sponsorships were supposed to promote Canadian unity and federalism after the Chrétien government nearly lost the country in the 95 referendum. So the AG's office went poking around. Found $100 million that was spent in government money. No work done. Nothing. Just invoices.
generated in order to create fees for companies like Groupe Action. You remember that? Groupe Action. The rot had spread into government departments. Public Works here in Ottawa, in her words, quote, broke every rule in the book. Paul Martin called the inquiry. The RCMP, Via Rail, the Old Port of Montreal, Business Development Bank of Canada, Canada Post, all, quote, played a role in transferring money through questionable means. That's a rotten government. And you may remember some of the names that were in the news at the time. I sure do. Jean Bro, Paul Coffin, Chuck Guite. They all went to prison. Prison time. Hard time. Gomery, the inquiry cost $14 million to get to the bottom of that. But it uncovered a lot of rot in Ottawa and Montreal, that's for sure. Here in the city of Ottawa, we have $10 billion worth of transit construction that is either completed, underway, or planned for the future. And it's been 23 days since a light rail train was on the tracks carrying any passengers in Ottawa. The whole transit system is in chaos. It hasn't worked consistently the way it was supposed to, the way it was promised to, for 2 years. The entirety of its existence. Is that because of negligence, incompetence, inexperience, or corruption? I don't think there's going to be an inquiry. The question is, should there be an inquiry? Gloria, what do you think, Gloria?
Yeah, hi, Rob.
Hi, Gloria.
Hi. Well, down the line, perhaps we do need a judicial inquiry. But at the meantime, because I know we all want answers to many, many questions, my response right now would be I want technical answers. I want to know about the strength of the metal that was used for the wheels. I want to know about the design. I want to know about the tracks. These are the kind of things I think we need to get started with, and we need a very well-known, reliable, competent company that can do the testing.
Okay.
Because once you've got your groundwork laid, if there's anything there to be found, we'll find it. We'll get the answers, and then we can move from there. You move forward from a strong position, not a weak one. And at the moment, we don't have those answers, at least not to my knowledge. So a judicial inquiry, possibly, down the road, but it was just to send some guy to jail for so many months or a couple of years. That does not get our problems solved.
Okay. All right, Gloria. Thank you. Thank you. Very
Bob.
interesting point of view. Yep. Thank you. Bob in Barrhaven. Bob.
Yeah, good morning, Rob.
Hi, Bob. Judicial inquiry.
I think it's actually kind of, for lack of a better word, laughable that the city council gets to vote and decide whether there should be an inquiry.
Right. Okay.
That's just that's just not acceptable.
Who should decide? An upper level of government?
I think probably, for lack of a better authority, or maybe the province, maybe the province, Ford, because they had input into this too.
Well, a third of the money came from the provincial government. So
yeah. I just don't think that it's right that they should decide their own fate for a way of describing it. Because there are so many unanswered questions, and I mean, you have I've heard people ask, was this a basement bargain deal we got on this thing, or was it supposed to be a world-class system? And I've never really heard the answer to that. Is this supposed to be a good? It's obviously not a very good system.
Obviously, yeah. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Yep. Yeah. I think you're right on there, sir. And in the market, David. Morning, David. Judicial inquiry, yay or nay on that one?
Well, I'm going to say no because the council is going to vote against it anyway. So it's a non-starter, and I won't waste my vote on it. Since it's that. But I would like to see. I mean, we'd all like to see what actually went down, whose palms were greased, if any, what transpired. But it's not going to. It would probably end up being as corrupt as the original problem. And, I think what you should do with the money, what that would cost is maybe find some good parts for your rail and get it back going, because that's what everybody wants. And just further to what you were mentioning about how the city had purchased an additional 38 cars for phase 2.
Yes.
Without having fully tested the ones for phase 1. Also keep in mind that the same council also voted to buy $1 billion worth of electric buses that have not been tested in our city environment. So there's that too.
Oh, there's that too. Yes. Don't worry. We're already taking possession of some of those. Okay, thank you, David. Yep, thank you. Yeah, we did talk about that. Considerable length, I remember. That's it for the Talkback Hour. Thank you. It will be an interesting city council meeting tomorrow. We'll be ducking into that one for sure and giving you the live play-by-play as it's going on. Coming up in the final hour of the Rob Snow Show, Michael Taube, columnist, syndicated columnist. Read him in the National Post. He had a column recently in the Wall Street Journal. Loonie politics, Troy Media, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. So much to get into. Capacity limits in Ontario. A Leaf game, a Sens game can be sold out, but the poor old restaurant owners at 50% capacity. Chrystia Freeland. The rise of Chrystia Freeland. A lengthy report in the Globe and Mail this week about Freeland's time as a pro-democracy activist and environmental activist in the Ukraine, and how she was followed and her mail was read and her phone was tapped by the KGB, and she was eventually kicked out of the country. What's going on with a report like that in the news media? I'm going to ask Michael about that. And an interesting column in the Ottawa Citizen print edition today that I want to ask him about. Did you know that, I remember this, I'm glad it's in the newspaper today, our sister city, our twin city, is Beijing. I wonder what Michael thinks about that. We'll ask him right after the 11 o'clock news here on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, make that October 12th. Feels a bit like August. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 16 degrees. It's 18 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. COVID case count in Ontario for the past 2 days has been released now. 458 cases On Thanksgiving Monday, 390 today. 2 additional deaths reported yesterday and none today. Ottawa had 30 new cases on Monday, 18 today. And over the past 2 days, there was 1 new case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 28 in Eastern Ontario, 7 more cases in Renfrew. City News Time, 11:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's shorts and T-shirt weather for us today. Sun and cloud, warm and humid. High 25 will feel closer to 30. Partly cloudy this evening, rain overnight and 14. And tomorrow, periods of light rain, 21. For today, the high, 25.
And right now, 16 degrees in Ottawa, and it's 18 degrees in Smiths Falls. Many groups, including a city council, are expected to rally outside City Hall late this afternoon in hopes City Council will pass a motion to be introduced tomorrow that would initiate a public inquiry into the LRT. Here's City News reporter Parushka Gopalkista.
Among those calling for a public inquiry into the city's LRT is Sam Hirsch, who is a board member of Horizon Ottawa. Hirsch, who will be in attendance at the rally, tells City News that residents who rely on public transit deserve more transparency when it comes to the LRT.
Residents are being held hostage to this 30-year, $2 billion maintenance contract. We're paying $4 to $5 million every single month. And we think, we're paying for this train. It's our train. It's our LRT. It's not any person in particular. It's not the Rideau Transit Group's train. It's not Mayor Watson's train. It's our train. And we deserve to, know what's going on, or if we can get a better deal by perhaps bringing this the maintenance in-house.
The rally is set to take place one day before City Council votes on a decision for a judicial inquiry into the LRT. The LRT has been out of service since September 19th. Parushka Gopalkista, City News.
City News Time, 11:03. The wave of the future. Toronto's University Health Network and a company have completed the world's first lung transplant delivered by unmanned drone. The drone carrying lungs flew from Toronto's Western Hospital to the General on September 25th, the General in Toronto. Martine Rothblatt is the chief executive of the parent company, and he witnessed that historic journey.
To get there, it had to go around all these even taller buildings of Toronto General Hospital. It goes around them and comes down gently, and then they open up the lung box, and Dr. Kashavji was right next to me. And he reaches inside. Of course, he's done this, countless times. And he looks at the lung, and he had that look on his face like, this is a really good lung. This patient is going to do really well. And fortunately, the patient did do really well.
The lung delivery comes as tech companies are racing to courier organs by drone after some U.S. firms made successful flights with kidneys, corneas, and a pancreas. Amazon is allowing tech and executive employees to continue working remotely as long as they commute to the office when necessary. Here's reporter Rebecca Jarvis.
They are now saying you can work remotely indefinitely as long as you're able to commute to the office on occasion and your team says it's okay. In a note to employees, the CEO of Amazon writing that he's going to be leaving this up to the individual teams. The director manager on each team will have to make the call and say whether it works for their group.
Now, Amazon's previous expectation that most employees would need to be in the office at least 3 days a week when the offices reopen from this pandemic. That's expected in January. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
We're back with syndicated columnist Michael Taube. Read him in Loonie Politics, Troy Media, National Post, Wall Street Journal. Saw a column from you in the Wall Street Journal. Michael, good morning. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing, Rob?
Good, good. Former speechwriter to a guy named Stephen Joseph Harper. The NHL season's about to get underway. Go Sens. I would like to ask you, though, about the silliness of the Ford government's decision to allow sold-out Sens games and Leaf games while so many other business owners continue to face capacity restrictions. Who comes up with this stuff, Michael?
Well, I'll reserve comments on the Sens. But, yeah, I mean, who comes up with this stuff? Well, it's definitely not you and I. It's hard to believe some of these things happen. But, again, you can understand, to be fair, we'll play devil's advocate. You can understand why you want to obviously have sports stadiums back to full capacity because, all those various sports teams, no matter what professional sport it is, they've been losing an enormous amount of money, and we get it. Obviously they want to have as many people in as possible. But when you juxtapose that with the fact that restaurants can only have basically half capacity for inside dining and are struggling mightily, and many businesses are shutting down as we speak, it's preposterous. The juxtaposition makes absolutely no sense. Either have both things to full capacity or have neither thing open. And the latter would be a terrible option. Again, I have no issue with Leafs games, Sens games, any games going back to full capacity. That's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. But you've got to do it part and parcel with everything else as well so that we can get the economy rolling again.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what kind of crowd the Senators draw. I mean, that was an issue for the Ottawa Senators long before anybody even heard of COVID-19. Toronto will be a sellout no matter what. I don't know.
Yeah, look, Ottawa's had decent crowds over the years, but you're right. It's been difficult having a sellout, but also you have an owner that's more difficult than ours. Let's put it that way.
I suppose so. Yeah, okay. So, look, I want to talk about I call it the rise of Chrystia Freeland. There's just some, I don't know, there's stuff going on that makes me just wonder what's going on, okay?
You mean the one who scares Russia?
For example, vaccine mandates was a hot issue during the election campaign. It was like probably the most effective issue of the Liberal campaign against Erin O'Toole.
I guess.
And then everybody's waiting to see what the policy is going to be like. Okay, the Prime Minister calls a news conference. He's going to announce vaccine mandates, assemble the press gallery, put it on the cable news networks. Over to you, Chrystia Freeland, to make the announcement. She's the one who makes the announcement. She's the one who handles a lot of the questions, and Trudeau looks like there are 1,000 other places he'd rather be because of his questionable Tofino trip, okay?
Yeah.
So then I'm just like, what's going on with that? That's weird. It's just weird. But no, even more weird is this thing. It's in the Globe and Mail. It was online over the weekend. It was in the print edition today. Mm-hmm. It says special to the Globe and Mail. It's in the news section, okay? Right above Christy Kirkup's write-up, right above a story from the Associated Press, and then this one, special to the Globe and Mail. Simon Miles, assistant professor in the Sanford School of Public Policy, Duke University. And it's like this glowing report about Chrystia Freeland, freedom fighter, going up against the KGB, fighting for Ukraine's independence, which is well known about her. She's pro-independent Ukraine. Get it out from under the thumb of the evil empire of the Soviet Union. But I mean, on and on and on it goes. Her mail was read, and her phone was tapped, and they had a grudging admiration for her. All of this stuff, and I'm just thinking, what's going on here? Is something bigger going on? In other words, are we being kind of fed something as though she's either maneuvering herself for a post-Trudeau Liberal Party, or we're being prepared for a post-Trudeau Liberal Party? What do you think?
Or are those rumors about the slush fund for the newspapers working out well? But to be honest and to be fair, look, two parts to that. Firstly, the reason Chrystia Freeland does the heavy lifting is basically why many people have called her the minister of everything, or the de facto prime minister, which they sort of say half jokingly. It's because she has her fingers in every single pie in Ottawa. Again, because Justin Trudeau and his senior advisors trust her. She obviously has handled a lot of different issues, and whether you like her or not, she is the most powerful Liberal. She is more powerful than the Prime Minister is right now. Doesn't mean the Prime Minister doesn't have the more important role. Leading the country obviously is higher than being the Minister of Finance, but she is trusted with an enormous amount of files. And since 2015, Rob, she's carried an enormous amount of files. So that part of it isn't shocking to me. And quite frankly, and I think you and I talked about, and I've talked about with others, I'm sure you've talked about it with other guests, I really don't think Justin Trudeau's much into this position anymore and much into this role. And the Tofino trip was just, a very small tip of the iceberg. As offensive as it was and as disappointing as it was, I just think that we're going to slowly, over time, see him drift out of the position or see Chrystia Freeland more in the front man's role. In terms of the Globe and Mail article, I agree with you. I don't know who comes up with these sorts of things. And the version of Chrystia Freeland being this pro-democracy environmental activist in Ukraine, yes, I agree with you that has been partially her role. I mean, she's obviously had other issues to deal with family members. I mean, allegations of anti-Semitism and other things, which are not linked directly to her, but obviously have just followed along because it is her family. But the whole thing to say that she's feared in this, in Russia, and that the KGB, trembles when they hear her name. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it.
Well, I'll call her Frida from now on, right?
Yeah. Frida Freeland or Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, do I accept the fact that she obviously has played a role in terms of discussions with Russia and has attempted to put her foot down on certain things? I think that's probably true. But then I also remember the Chrystia Freeland who left a couple of conferences a few years ago, as you may recall, in near tears because she wasn't getting the sort of positioning that she wanted out of it, during trade negotiations. And I'm sorry, I can't balance the two out. I'm not saying that Chrystia Freeland's a shrinking violet and a weeping willow on the side, but on the other hand, the fact that, that certain industries and certain groups in Russia, the former Soviet Union, are trembling when her name is mentioned, I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
It's quite, let's say we're just kind of being fed this, whatever, I don't know, but it's an interesting contrast, if people are worried, well, Trudeau, he's so far left wing. He said he admired China, and he's his government's so cozy with China, and what I wouldn't give for a real freedom fighter. And here's Frida, and she's in the Cold War, for crying out loud. She's going up against the KGB.
Decades ago.
Trudeau's writing missives about how much he loves Fidel. Meanwhile, Frida's out there and she's fighting the KGB. I love it. I
know. It's crazy. It's a crazy contrast. It's true. Who knows what to believe anymore? But again, I agree that obviously as a former journalist, as a politician, she's dealt with a lot of different things, but I'm sorry, her role just can't be that immense. Unless there's something going on behind the scenes that we've not heard about, but by now it would have leaked.
Holy cow. I wonder now, because a lot of people probably aren't aware, Ottawa, like a lot of cities over the world, they have these, you're our sister city, or you're our twin city. And the city of Ottawa has a twin city or sister city agreement with Beijing. So if I wonder if you stop, like, say, 100 random people in some city in Canada somewhere, and you ask them, how do you feel knowing that the capital city of Canada, Ottawa, is the sister city of Beijing? I wonder what sentiment would come back. I think it'd be overwhelmingly negative, and they'd want that agreement canceled. So we have this agreement. It's been in place for years. Yeah. When it was set up, it's supposed to, improve business ties, tourism ties, all of these things. It's an economic arrangement, really.
Yes.
There's a great column in the print edition of the Ottawa Citizen today. I haven't seen it online, but saying we should cancel this. And look at Beijing. Yeah. Look how they treat us. What do you think? Should we cancel an agreement like that? I could get behind that. Sure. What do you think?
I would get behind it, too. I have not read the piece because, as you said, it's not online. And unfortunately, I don't have the Ottawa Citizen sitting in front of me. That's not arrived in my city anymore, unfortunately. But great paper, nevertheless. Yeah, I do agree with that. It's interesting when you look up the list of sister cities, and for the hell of it, I looked up Toronto as well because I got to be honest with you, Rob, I don't know it by heart who it is. And, there's various things. There's friendship cities, there's partner cities. They all sort of work under the twin or sister city motif. And it's interesting, of the four that we have Chicago, we have Frankfurt in Germany, we have Milan in Italy, and interestingly, we have a smaller city in China, Chongqing, which I didn't know offhand.
Okay.
So I thought when I initially saw that, based on all we've dealt with Huawei Technologies, Manulife, the two Michaels and so forth, maybe Toronto should break that. I certainly think that Ottawa should consider, as the Ottawa Citizen writer has suggested, breaking that arrangement as well with Beijing, because for Ottawa, that's even worse to be aligned with the capital city. And again, it's not necessarily that you're trying to put a an invisible knife into China's back, so to speak. But based on all the problems that we've had lately with China, and the fact that, in terms of polling and so forth, I think, popularity or approval numbers for China within Canada are in the low 20s or maybe even below that by now. I think it would be wise to actually rethink this Twin Cities arrangement. Yeah. And you can always make a new one. I mean, there are many cities available that do not have a Twin City arrangement with Canadian cities, whether they're large or small. And I think based on all that we faced the past few years, even if you would just want to put the starting point as December 2018, when Meng Wanzhou was put under house arrest initially, I think that would be the best thing to do. So I think Prague has had a good idea, but the fact that they had a similar arrangement with Beijing, canceled it, and signed a new deal with Taipei. Mm-hmm. I think Ottawa should do the same thing, and it would be wise of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or the freedom-fighting Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Everything, to make that choice.
I love it. What a great way to end our segment. Thank you, Michael Taube. Great to hear from you.
My thanks, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Syndicated columnist Michael Taube. We'll be right back with this week's big business news stories with Dave Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal. This is City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News,
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Okay, let's take a look at the big business news of the week with David Sali. He's with the Ottawa Business Journal. He's got a heck of a story for us today. Okay, this is big breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this will cause nostalgic moments for some people. Okay, we're talking about the launch of Tex-Mex cuisine in Ottawa. Okay, the Ottawa Strip Mall, that is best known for being home to the very first Lone Star Texas Grill. Sold. Okay. Okay. I have had, oh man, I have had a lot of meals in that strip mall at that Lone Star over the years, let me tell you. The Fisher Heights Plaza, Lone Star Texas Grill location, right, baseline near Prince of Wales, I guess, around that area, right?
Yeah.
Up around that area. Yeah. Good morning, David. Yeah.
Good morning, Rob. Getting all nostalgic here.
I am. Yeah. That's where it all began, the Tex-Mex craze, right in that strip mall right there. Yeah. So
that's it.
Yeah. Tell us about this deal. I mean, it's interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's exactly, Rob. I mean, and people, as you say, know Fisher Heights Plaza. I'm probably, if more than just known around the neighborhood, because of the fact that, it is home to the first Lone Star. That was back in 1986, when a couple of former Rough Riders.
That's right.
Val Belcher, I believe, was one of them, and got the idea. They'd heard about the Tex-Mex craze down south, and they decided, let's bring this to Ottawa, and since then, of course, that chain has grown to well over a dozen locations across Ontario and beyond. So, this is where it all began. Fisher Heights Plaza, right near basically the corner of Baseline and Fisher. So not a huge mall, but 36,000 square feet.
Fisher,
with a basically fully leased. You've got a National Bank in there, a Subway, convenience store, a few healthcare tenants. So,
so the plaza itself is a pretty good business to be in too, in addition to being in the Tex-Mex restaurant business.
Well, exactly, and as Graham Webster of Coble Commercial Real Estate, he brokered the deal, and he said to me, I mean, the property also includes an empty parking lot right beside it. That is an ideal site for, say, a residential high rise. So you've got there's big upside beyond just the fact that it's got a solid base of tenants. You've got a steady rental income coming in there, but you've also got this huge extra development potential source of income if you build something on that parking lot. So he really thinks that was what attracted the buyer, Joey Taberge, local developer, and so he bought it, it was from the Lycan Group, which is run by Barbara Farber. She's a very well-known local real estate executive and community leader. So all around, a lot of notable things, Rob, about this deal. Even though from a dollar value perspective, it's not eye popping, but still.
Yep. But it's tasty. It's a tasty story, nevertheless. Okay, this is interesting because Air Canada, when you think about Air Canada in Toronto, it's usually about everything that's going on at Pearson and not necessarily the Billy Bishop Airport.
Right.
But now Air Canada is going to be flying between Toronto and Ottawa using the Billy Bishop Airport, basically the downtown airport, if you will. Tell us about this. This is good news.
That's right, Rob. Well, this is this is I guess a sign, that the airline industry, which has been devastated, as you well know, we've talked about this many times by the pandemic. Just people just stopped flying. I mean, pure and simple. Well, maybe this is a sign that that it has been slowly regaining altitude, and maybe this is another sign that it's set to take another leap forward here. So Air Canada will start flying between Ottawa and Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport. That's on Toronto Island at the end of the month. It's going to start October 31st service with 4 return flights daily to Ottawa and 4 to Toronto, and that will eventually double to 8 return trips each way by next summer. So it's not the first time that Air Canada has flown between Ottawa and the Toronto Island Airport, but it's been a long time. It was 15 years ago the last time Air Canada offered service between Billy Bishop and the nation's capital. So after 15 years, they've decided to revive the route. And, Mark LaRoche, he's the president and CEO of the Ottawa International Airport Authority, and he thinks that this is yet another sign that that people are they're getting that itch to travel again, that you're going to start to see traffic pick up at the airport. It's been a very tough stretch the last 18 months. The airport lost over $50 million last year, expects to lose even more this year, but we're seeing signs. This is not the first announcement, as you know, Rob. We've had other airlines, Sunwing, saying it's getting back in action. Porter is now back in action. They're flying again.
Yep.
Newfoundland-based PAL Airlines, they're flying into Ottawa now. So we're seeing some signs of recovery here, Rob, which can't come a moment too soon for the airline industry.
So very quickly here, maybe we only have about a minute, but Rockify. What happened to Rockify? Why? Geez, it's such a catchy slogan. Why buy when you can Rockify? Didn't. I guess it's gone, Rockify, right?
Well, it essentially it's merged with a UK company that does the same thing, and that company is called Fat Llama. And Bruce Linton of Canopy Growth fame, he was the co-founder of Rockify, and he is now taken over as CEO. And he just said, the deal it needed to be done for the company to survive in the long term. It had burned through about $18 million or more in cash in the last 4 years, and just hadn't really been able to hit on that. Hadn't quite been able to find that formula for success. Rob, it a good idea of a peer-to-peer marketplace, renting items to people like appliances. Like
I remember during the floods and the tornadoes. You need a chainsaw, you need a generator, you need a dump truck or whatever. Like you could use the Rockify platform and find that stuff, right? So
But it had various problems, according to Linton, with the business model. He just felt, and they'd spent a lot trying to scale up. It hadn't worked out the way he had hoped. So they've merged with Fat Llama, and it will now be known as Fat Llama. The Rockify name has been retired, so to speak.
Retired, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, David, great stuff this week, as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, Dave Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal. We'll be right back after the news here on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 12th of October. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy, 19 degrees. Smiths Falls, 19 as well. Here's what's making news this hour. A rally outside Ottawa City Hall later today to call for the city to cancel its P3 maintenance contract with Rideau Transit Group. The demonstration set for 5:30 this afternoon. Multiple citizen groups are also calling for a public inquiry into the O-Train. City Council will discuss the idea of a judicial inquiry at its meeting tomorrow. Fewer than 400 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario today and under 500 yesterday. The province says 2 more people have died of the virus, but the health minister says 70% of the new cases are in people who are not known to be fully vaccinated. The federal court is set to rule today on whether the former head of Canada's vaccine distribution should get his job back. Major General Denis Fortin launched the legal challenge not long after his dismissal in May, arguing the federal government politically interfered to have him removed. The Trudeau government says it was the acting chief of defense staff that made the call and that he was worried about an investigation into Fortin's conduct. That's a wrap on another Rideau Canal boating season, officially ending yesterday, and canal water levels will be brought down starting tomorrow from Long Island through Downs Lake. Areas from Burritt Rapids to Long Island and between Close and Merrickville will see their water levels drop later this month. City News Time, 11:32. Partly cloudy right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Geoffrey Johnston is back. He's an international affairs columnist with the Kingston Whig-Standard, usually with us on Monday mornings, but we weren't here on Monday morning because we were getting ready for round 2 and Thanksgiving turkey leftovers. But Geoffrey's been kind enough to join us here on Tuesday. Good morning, Geoffrey. Welcome back.
Rob.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear from you. So, we have all of these reports about booster shots, and who will be getting booster shots, and do we really need booster shots? And if we get them, when will we get them, and what kind will they be? These would essentially be third shots. What is the global view when it comes to, people in the wealthiest countries even talking about having third shots? What about the rest of the world, Geoffrey?
Yeah, so the Director General of the World Health Organization has pointed out that right now in the low and middle income countries in the world, so there are about 92 of these countries, they need right now over 2 billion shots right now to do their healthcare workers, the frontline workers, to get their health systems back up, and for their most vulnerable people. And that needs to happen right now. And as the UN has pointed out, in the industrialized world, there are more vaccines than people. But in the developing world, it's just the opposite. So approximately 90% of people in Africa have not even had one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. So there's definitely vaccine inequity happening right now.
Okay. Now, with vaccine inequity, what else is contributing to vaccine inequity over and above the wealth of nations, so to speak? Because there are other things happening, like bottlenecks, for example.
Yeah, so for my latest article for the Kingston Whig-Standard, I spoke with David Morley, who's the president and CEO of UNICEF Canada. And so we had an in-depth discussion about UNICEF's role in all this. So yes, there are supply bottlenecks during the pandemic, and we're all seeing that with other things like food and just basic necessities, because the pandemic, it just gums everything up, and so that makes everything much harder. But when it comes to low and middle income countries, they need assistance with the cold chain. So for the vaccines to remain viable and stable, they have to be kept at a certain temperature. So UNICEF Canada has been tasked with delivering 2 billion doses of
COVID-19 vaccines to the developing world, in the next few months. And so a big part of what UNICEF does, according to David Morley, is one, they make sure that the vaccines are getting through customs, because even though these are humanitarian products, they still have to go through the national regimes. And UNICEF is really good at doing all that, because before the pandemic, UNICEF was delivering half of all the vaccines in the world that are used to prevent childhood diseases such as mumps and rubella and measles and these other diseases. So UNICEF really knows how to do all this.
Okay.
They also go in to these low and middle income countries and assess the cold chain to make sure that they have all that they need. So UNICEF will work with local ministries of health to strengthen their cold chain. So, for example, they'll do things like, because in a lot of these places the electricity is spotty, so they'll bring in solar-powered generating sources for the cold chain. They'll also go in and help them teach them inventory. They'll also provide personal protective equipment, because as David Morley told me, it's not good just to have a bunch of foreigners come in and do everything. They've got to come in. UNICEF wants to come in and teach the locals how to do it, so they'll be prepared for the next pandemic or the next health crisis. So it's about providing assistance, but it's also about training and lifting them up so that they'll be able to stand on their own in the future.
Okay. So UNICEF had this Give a Vax campaign. How did that go? Is that something Canadians were into? Or?
Yeah, so the Give a Vax program just wrapped up, and the whole thing of it was to allow Canadians, because as David Morley said, a lot of Canadians wanted to actually help. So this was to give Canadians an opportunity to actually donate cash, which would then be matched by the federal government. The federal government capped the matching donations up to $10 million. And so Canadians could make a donation, tax deductible, and this would be used to purchase and distribute vaccines. And according to David Morley, the preliminary accounting shows that Canadians gave $9.4 million. That could actually increase once they total up all the mail-in donations. So that means at least $9.4 million from individual Canadians, and that will be matched by the federal government. It's also important to note that UNICEF actually negotiates with the pharmaceutical companies, along with Gavi, which is the one of the vaccine alliance groups. And so UNICEF actually sits down with the pharmaceuticals, negotiates the price, and they actually procure all of this, because they've got this huge experience with doing this with childhood vaccines. So UNICEF remains the largest procurer of vaccines in the world. So when people give money to UNICEF, they're giving money to actually buy the vaccines and also to defray the cost of distributing those vaccines.
Yeah, Gavi Kovacs, right? Kovacs, that was very controversial at the time. Canada's position on that, Kovacs, and whether Canada was raiding Kovacs in order to secure supply, because at the time we were having troubles with our own supply of vaccines, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's still criticism from other NGOs that Canada and other wealthy countries are not yet ramping up their donations of actual doses.
How fair is that criticism in Europe?
Well, I think it is. We could be doing a lot better, to be honest. We're doing better in recent weeks, but the fact is there is still, as we said a moment ago, all these bottlenecks. And so what Canada's given a lot of cash, a lot of money, but right now there's need for the doses themselves, and we do have excess doses. So the head of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, said just the other day at their board meeting, the country of Guinea has received only 25 doses of a COVID vaccine. Not 25,000, not 25 million, 25 doses. And that's pretty outrageous. So when we look at all these wealthy countries, the United States, Canada, we're having trouble convincing people to get vaccinated. We could be taking some of those vaccines right now and shipping them to places where they actually have no vaccine. Now, I know this is increasing, but we've got to step this up, because we've missed, as the community of nations has missed the goals of vaccinating all healthcare workers in the developing world by the end of September. We've missed that. And so if we want to get out of this this terrible pandemic, we've really got to step it up, because the goal is by mid-2022 to vaccinate 70% of the world, and that includes, places like sub-Saharan Africa where they're getting very little. So to make that happen, we've got to really pick up the pace.
Yeah, I was just thinking when it comes to vaccine hesitancy and how we seem to be meeting resistance in Canada now and other wealthy countries. There's just going to be a percentage of the population that refuses to get vaccinated, even if it means they're going to lose their job. They'll stick to it and refuse to be vaccinated.
Yes,
I wonder what would happen in some of these poorer countries with that attitude. For example, I'm sure you saw they recently approved a new malaria vaccine. I mean, how many lives is that going to save in a place like sub-Saharan Africa to have a malaria vaccine? Like hundreds of thousands of lives every year will be saved because of that.
That'll save at least 500,000 lives every year. That is a miracle. That's a miracle drug. Yeah, and people are going to take that drug. Now, with that said, there is still misinformation in the developing world. This is, this is one of the great plagues of our time, is this misinformation. So this is why it's important for, UNICEF and other non-governmental organizations to be working with people on the ground. So a big part of what they do also is education, because they're educating people.
Okay.
But this can be done, because when we look at something like polio, we've all but eradicated polio in the world. There's only a couple spots where there's any polio left. And this shows you how powerful vaccines are. And this is why it's important for people to get their sources of information from actually legitimate, trusted sources. And, it's a first world problem when you have to pay people to get a vaccine, because, this is the thing that is going to save our lives and get our lives back to normal. So everybody needs to get fully vaxxed, whether this is in Canada or in sub-Saharan Africa. And by the way, sub-Saharan Africa, David Morley told me during our interview, approximately 7% of the people in sub-Saharan Africa have received one dose of COVID-19 vaccine, which is not much.
No. Hey, so look, I'm not sure. Geoffrey usually is in Brockville when he calls into the Rob Snow Show. What are you paying for gas in Brockville, Geoffrey?
I filled up last night, so it was $1.31.
$1.31? Wow, what a screaming deal.
It was a deal.
Wow, that's pretty good. If it didn't cost so much for me to drive to Brockville, I might go down there and get some gas. I might get 2 tank loads of gas at that price. $1.42 just around the corner here. Hey, I could probably drive around Ottawa and find a better price. Not much better, though. But I do wonder, I mean, you've seen the headlines, I'm sure, energy crisis, energy crunch, all this stuff. Shortages of coal, natural gas, high gasoline prices, the winter of discontent, they're already calling it in the UK. I do wonder if this is going to take some of the wind out of the sails of the big climate change conference that's coming up at the end of the month, the COP26. Canada's probably going to send about 3,000 people to that thing, Geoffrey. So,
yeah, this is going to be one of the pivotal ones because all the experts are telling us we really have just about a decade to turn this ship around. The transition to a more sustainable energy system is going to be painful, and I'm not going to say otherwise. We're going to be, at some point in the very near future, shifting to electric vehicles. We're going to have a greater commitment to public transit, and I know Ottawa's having all kinds of problems with the light rail, and that's making things more difficult, but it's bloody warm today. It feels
lovely.
Like summer, and it's I'm old enough to remember. We used to struggle to keep the heat off before Thanksgiving. We try to hold out and save a little money, and it's crazy that we're wearing T-shirts, and it's crazy that we're having these extreme storms like we saw in New York City. The end of the hurricane caused that terrible flooding and all that death, and we're going to see that more and more. So there are many different we've got to look at the costs of transition in many different ways. So yes, it's going to cost us more at the pumps, and it's going to cost us probably more to buy electric vehicles, but you've got to also think of the cost, the lost economic cost to all this extreme weather and the damage. And, some places are going to become uninsurable if you live near the coast, in the near future in some places, because there's going to be too much storm damage or soil erosion. So there are many different ways to measure the cost.
Okay. Great stuff this week. Thanks so much for joining us on a Tuesday morning, Geoffrey. We'll talk next week. Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye. Columnist with the Kingston Whig-Standard, Geoffrey Johnston. Money Mondays on a Tuesday with Peter Fraser, certified financial planner, portfolio manager at Cardinal Planning here in Ottawa, coming up next on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our centre, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our centre the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they're both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighbourhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest thing that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it's so great. We have Peter Fraser is with us. He's certified financial planner, Cardinal Planning, Manulife Securities Inc. here in Ottawa. And good morning, Peter. Nice to hear from you.
Rob.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So Peter is going to join us for a weekly segment. We're calling it Money Mondays. And wouldn't you know, it just so happens that it works out the premier episode, Peter, is on Tuesday. So
keeps everybody listening, Rob, and on our toes.
Yeah, we like to keep people on their toes around here. No, but look, it's so great to hear from you, especially now when it comes to financial planning, because there are so many things that must be top of mind We look at the real estate market and how wild and crazy things are in the real estate market because of the pandemic, and so many things are driven by the pandemic, and wild and crazy swings on the stock market, and people are wondering about energy crisis, and people are wondering about cryptocurrencies and all of this stuff. But Peter is here to give us kind of like the sober second view of it all, and to drown out a lot of the noise for us. So it's called Money Mondays. Yeah, it's Tuesday, but let's get into it, Peter. It's so great to hear from you. The federal election. Yeah, and then throw politics into the mix. Right. So then you have the federal election, and second minority mandate for the Trudeau government. But when they campaigned, they were promising a variety of tax measures.
They were,
and some of them could be the law fairly soon. So let's talk about some of them, which, if they're ever implemented, could have a direct impact on some of us. What stands out for you?
Well, I think in terms of sort of like a tax roundup from that federal election, you're right. The party that won had a platform that they're proposing to enact into law. And I thought 3 or 4 of the pieces in there are quite interesting, especially if you're still out of the home market. So the first one is they're proposing a plan called a registered home savings account. And basically, if you're under 40, they're proposing that you can contribute up to $40,000 into this structure towards a first-time home purchase. You can withdraw that money tax-free. And the key component is they're saying at this point that money doesn't have to be repaid back into that plan. And any money you contribute towards that is sort of rolls up underneath your RRSP eligibility limits, but they're also deductible from income. So it looks a little more flexible, quite a bit more flexible than the existing home buyers protection plan. There are some a turnstile on getting the money out. In other words, they don't want you using it to flip real estate. So 50% of your funds at least have to stay in the property for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
But, effective July 22.
That's the kind of anti-speculation measure, I guess.
Kind of a noise dampening effect, so you can't get in with that benefit and drive the market up by flipping. So they're also going to double the first-time homebuyers tax credit. So currently it's $5,000. They're proposing $10,000. The tax credit rate on it is 15%. So if you're a first-time homebuyer, that could mean $1,500 in your pocket. And not bad if you're not in that segment and want to be.
Yeah, I think one of the themes for today that Peter has identified is what the Liberals were talking about when it comes to housing and what might be in a budget, what might be in some legislation coming down. So Registered Home Savings Account, the RHSP, right? RHSP, and the First-Time Homebuyers Tax Credit. Okay, so all right, we'll see what happens there. And then there's something called a multi-generational home renovation tax credit. Now, look, whenever governments do this, it's very popular. It's very popular. Any kind of renovation tax credit, very popular, both with the people taking advantage of it and very popular programs. So tell us about multi-generational home renovation tax credit. What's that?
It's a mouthful to describe, but if you're proposing to renovate your house for an immediate or extended family member to come and live with you, they're proposing a credit of 15% on the first $50,000 of your reno. So at that rate, conceivably that's $7,500 offset towards that first $50,000 contribution. That's the maximum they're proposing at this point. But as you say, it's designed to help people find another way of extending residency to, immediate or extended family members. There's not a lot of definition around it at this point, but it's new, and I suspect it will be popular, as you point out.
Yeah. So
we're
going to finish the basement, Grandma. You're living down there because I need a $7,500 tax savings. Okay,
right. And I am already in that basement with my home office deduction, which is going to go up from $400 to $500 because lots of people are still working from home, and they enjoyed that little goodie last year. So there's more where that came from under these proposals.
Okay. So that wasn't just a one-time thing. It's going to be
Well, it's going year to year. It's at least a two-time thing. But as you pointed out at the top, these aren't law yet, but they well could be, depending on how fast these folks move when they come back and convene and get to work. So,
now this isn't going to affect me because I'm not in the market for $100,000 car. Or I'm not buying the last boat I bought. I paid $1,200 for it. Okay, and so I'm not in the market for a $250,000 boat. But look, we got to get tough on the rich in this political climate. So, what are some of the say wealth taxes or luxury goods taxes that are being contemplated here?
Well, so let's distinguish. One of the luxury taxes are already law. They went through in budget 2021 in the spring.
All right.
So, but back to their proposal, what you're pointing out is the alternative minimum tax is a little nasty dance that everybody who may have high income and low taxes has to go through. So there's an attractive item in the window that says we're going to affect a more punitive alternative minimum tax measure. In other words, we don't want people paying too little or no taxes. So this is always a good, I'll say, tax the rich touch, but that's also proposed to take place in this package of election promises. So the ones that are already in place, though, that are interesting to watch for, continue to be a pretty generous treatment of the old age security benefit. They all got, if you're over 75, you got a $500 check in August, coincidentally with the election, and that's poised to keep going up by 10% a year, which is quite a bit in excess of currently it's not that much in excess of the rate of inflation, but normally it would be.
Right. So far, fingers crossed, Peter. That's not the rate of inflation. We'll see what happens. Look, that's our time for today, Peter. So we'll talk to you next Monday for our new segment called Money Mondays. Thank you, Peter.
Money Monday on Monday.
Love it.
Rob.
Yeah, Peter.
Bye.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.